Chapter 28-21. But at this moment, she realized that it was useless for her to humble herself. Old Madame Li had seen how angry she was just now. Old Madame Li would not argue with the younger generation, but since the other party had glared at her and demanded an explanation, they had to have a good chat. How many years had it been since someone had been so arrogant in front of an old woman like her? Since they were so arrogant that they had come to family Xia's old residence. Old Madame Li glanced at Madame Li, who was standing in front of her. She happened to see Madame Li, who had been arrogant just now, shrink back a little because of her glance. Old Madame Li smiled faintly. Old Madame Li, who was wearing a modified tang suit, looked up slightly and said gently, "Since you don't want to talk, let me start." Madame Li, who was still thinking, had a bad feeling when she heard this. She could not help but look up. That pair of kind eyes had a sharpness that made Madame Li's heart skip a beat. The majesty that she released made Madame Li's fingers tremble slightly. The person sitting in front of her was old Madame Li from family Xia. She was a legendary heroine who had carried a gun, killed enemies, and saved several founding generals. She had indeed gone overboard just now. She was still thinking about how to make up for it when old Madame Li said, "My sick son didn't say anything wrong. Back then, when I found out that my ex-daughter-in-law couldn't wait to go abroad after divorcing my son, I sent someone to investigate what exactly happened. I didn't expect that the eldest daughter of the Li family who married out of the family was so generous that she could marry an artist and a married woman at a party. She was so generous that she even vacated her own home to let a married woman and an artist be intimate with each other. Madame Li, although I'm old, my heart is not blind. What's more, it happened more than 20 years ago. I'm not old yet. I'm even younger than you are now. You say that our family Xia has no rules, but your rules are really worthless in my family. They're so bad that they're at the root. If I remember correctly, you should be the illegitimate daughter of old man Li's second wife. When it came to exposing someone's past, old Jiang had to be the one to do it. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. She didn't argue. She just said the truth, which made Madame Li feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. The cool wind penetrated into her heart and turned into cold air, which made her heart feel cold. She still wanted to make up for her mistake just now. But who would have thought that this old lady would take a knife and stab her fiercely? She even specially picked the sharpest knife. Good. If that was the case, then don't blame her for being rude. Madame Li, who was the most unwilling to talk about her identity, clenched her fists tightly and said with a fake smile, "Old Madam, I respect you as an elder. You have to be more polite and don't lose your identity as an elder. Otherwise, people outside might gossip about you." Was this a threat? Old Madam, who had never been afraid of threats, said to Xia Jinyuan, who was standing beside her, "Go outside and see if the ambulance has arrived. I'll guard the old madam. Yuan, you go outside and watch." Aunt Fong stood up. She understood what old madam meant. She smiled and said, "Leave this to old madam. You go to your own thing." Since old madam had stepped forward, how could she let the men in the family Xia stand up? The men of old madam family Xia were unyielding and unyielding. How could they care about such trivial matters? Chapter 28-22. In Madame Li's eyes, Madame Li was nothing. "Hurry up and do your own things," Madame Li urged. Xia Jinyuan couldn't stay even if he wanted to. He pursed his lips and said softly, "Don't be angry. Take care of yourself. I know you're filial. Hurry up and do your own things. I'll have a good chat with your mother and Madame Li." The kind-looking old madam looked at her tall grandson with a smile. She couldn't even hide the smile in her eyes. "After you're done with your work, go to the back and accompany the distinguished guest." Madame Li looked on coldly and mocked. "Madame Li, your good grandson was ordering me around just now. You've already stepped in, but you still won't let him apologize to me? Everyone says you're strict with rules. I've really seen it today. Other than his father, no one else in the family has dared to hit my grandson." Madame Li rushed up and slapped my grandson's face. "You've really opened my eyes." After watching Xia Jinyuan leave the main hall, Madame Li's smile faded. She ordered calmly, Ningfang, call old man Li's second wife and ask her to come over. Also, ask old man Li to come over if it's convenient for him. My granddaughter is so arrogant that she dared to come to my family and hit my grandson. Even I, Su Rong, can't bear to hit him. She even asked my family to apologize. I want to personally ask how the Li family raised their daughter. When Madame Li said she would call, she really did. She wasn't joking at all. Madame Li, who thought she was joking, didn't believe her. When Annie Fong called, she realized that the graceful Madame Li sitting on the high chair with a head of silver hair was serious. Madame Zhao's heart was already dead. It was as if the matter in front of her had nothing to do with her at all. What else could she do? She wanted to leave, but Chenglan wanted to stay. She didn't want to embarrass herself and drag Chenglan down with her. What else could she do? Although Madame Li was also an extraordinary woman in the capital, in front of this heroine, the old Madame, her skills were not just a little bit inferior. Auntie Fong said respectfully to Madame Li, "The head of the Li family picked up the phone and knew that you were the one who invited him. He immediately called his second wife over. He didn't ask what happened. He only apologized over the phone and asked me to express his apologies to you. Then I'll have to wait." The old Madame nodded slightly and sat in the armchair, waiting for the Li family to come. Madame Li understood that this matter was not a joke. Her face was extremely ugly. Seeing that the old Madame did not want to talk to her and that talking to her would be degrading her status, Madame Li almost gritted her teeth. She was already in her 60s and had become a grandmother. She was respected by the younger generation in the family, but she did not have any face in front of the old Madame. She couldn't take this lying down. "Old Madame, I respect you as an elder, so I didn't dare to disturb you. You, on the other hand, have troubled my elderly mother to come over. Old Madame, you are too." Before she could say the word arrogant, Madame Xiao, who was sitting in a daze like a wooden sculpture, spoke up. "Chenglan, old Madame is not someone you can talk about. You have no right to talk about old Madame. If you don't want to go, then I have to go. I know that you want to watch a show. Take your time. I'll go first." Li Chenglan was shocked by her words. "I know that you want to watch a show." Shuman, she knew. What did she know? What did she know? Madame Li, whose eyes suddenly became sharp, looked at Madame Xiao, whose voice was dull. Madame Xiao stood up from the chair and walked to the old Madame. She suddenly knelt down in front of the old Madame without warning. Chapter 28-23. The old lady looked at her calmly. "If you have something to say, get up. You don't have to kneel to me. I can't afford your kneeling." She then said to Annie Fong, "Help her up. She's getting on in years. Don't torture yourself." This time, Mrs. Zhao's kneeling did not soften the old lady's heart. She did not want her grandson to be the one being wronged. "Shuman, I don't blame you. You choose the path you want to take. Our family, Xia, will let you go. But I have to tell you that someone wants to make a fool of our family, Xia. I can't tolerate such a person." Mrs. Li knew that she was talking about her. She wanted to interrupt, but the old lady said calmly, "It's your business to make friends and choose the path you want to take. It has nothing to do with our family, Xia. You don't have to come here in the future, and don't bring back people who have nothing to do with our family, Xia. The ambulance should be outside. I'm worried. You should go to the hospital. After all, you are Six Brothers' mother. Although you and Six Brother are not fated to be mother and son, you have at least given birth to a child for the Xia family. We can still accept it. When we meet on the street, we could just smile and nod." Xia Jinyuan had already brought the doctor and nurse in. Annie Fong happened to help Mrs. Xiao up and did not let the doctor see her kneeling. During the whole process, no one spoke to Mrs. Li. They all treated her as if she was invisible. Mrs. Xiao also ignored her. The doctor did a simple examination and asked her if there was anything wrong with her body. Soon, she was given an oxygen mask. The patient has a history of heart palpitations. Her breathing is rapid and short. We can't rule out the possibility of heart problems. She needs to be sent to the hospital for a detailed examination. Who will accompany her? Mrs. Li sneered when she heard that. Without a family member, her son won't acknowledge her. She has to go home and Six Brother follow her. The old lady ordered calmly. As for what Mrs. Li said, she simply ignored her. She was already in her 60s and should save some face for herself. She should not think that she could be a tyrant just because she was doing well now. In front of these old people, she really did not have that right. Madam Li, whose words were blocked, turned pale. Now she was pretending to be a good person. When Mrs. Xiao heard that her son was going to accompany her, she was happy at first, but then her face turned sad. No, I'll ask the nanny to come over. It's not a big problem. I'll go with you. Madam Li didn't dare to stay in the family Xiao alone. She had a hard time dealing with the old madam alone. If Master Xiao came out, she would be whipped. She stood up immediately, afraid that the old madam would stop her. She took a few steps forward and grabbed Madame Zhao's hand tightly. She said in a low voice, "I'll go with you. I'll be worried if he goes with you." Old Madame Xiao understood the meaning in her friend's eyes. She begged the old madam to be merciful. The air was a little quiet. The medical staff stood there and did not dare to move for a while. The old madam, who looked like an old neighbor, walked over and stopped in front of her former daughter-in-law. She slowly bent down with the help of Annie Fong. "Shuman, I remember that you're 57 or 58 years old. At 50, you know your destiny. At 60, you are obedient. Sound enters the heart, and there is no disobedience. You know the best, and you get it without thinking. You, remember what I said today. Don't be so willful in the future. You don't have the capital to be willful anymore, Shuman. Since you've lived the life you want, just keep living like this. Do you still remember what I asked you that year?" Chapter 28-24. Mrs. Xiao, who was crying again, nodded. She remembered. How could she forget the resolute words she had said that day? "Schumann, are you sure you don't regret your choice today?" "No, I won't regret it for the rest of my life." "Okay, then as your ex-mother-in-law, I wish you a happy ending. From now on, you have nothing to do with our family, Xia. If you regret it, please regret it alone." "I don't regret it. I, Xiao Schumann, never regret my choice. It's good that you remember. Go." The old lady waved her hand and signaled the medical staff to leave with the stretcher. Mrs. Li followed closely, afraid that she would be forced to stay. Just as she stepped out of the door, she heard the old lady say to the person beside her, "Go and tell old man Li that his daughter is gone. If he is sincere, he has to come. Wu Xin, forget it." "Yes, old lady," Annie Fong answered softly, just enough for Mrs. Li to hear. Mrs. Li, who was wearing high heels, slipped and leaned her body. She left the family Xia with a haze in her eyes. She didn't believe that her old father would really come. Old man Li really came with his second wife. When he received Li Chenglan's call, he glanced at his second wife, who didn't even dare to breathe loudly, and sneered, "The granddaughter of the Li family is really impressive. She has a 4 or 5-year-old grandson. She has been a grandmother for 4 or 5 years, but she still doesn't use her brain. Li Chenglan, you've lost face outside, yet you still have to make an old thing like me, who has 1 foot in a yellow pit, apologize. You're really capable." Mrs. Li was not the least bit surprised. She turned on the phone and put on earplugs. Her eyes were gloomy as she said, "Dad, you know that I'm already a grandmother. Your words are too harsh. You still know that you are a grandmother? I thought you were going back to your old age. Is the family Xiao a place where you can show off? Do you think you can stand straight now that your man is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the General Staff Department? Do you think you can speak tough now that you are on good terms with the Qin family? The Qin family is the same as the family Xia. Do you think you can play with them? Are you really that capable? To be able to make these 2 old aristocratic families give you orders and obey you? Li Chenglan, you're 62 this year, right? You're not 26. You can flaunt your power in front of others. If you can hold on, that's your ability. I don't care. But you've made a fool of yourself in front of the other old aristocratic families here. You've gotten yourself into big trouble. Not to mention that you're 62 this year. Even if you're 82, as long as I'm still alive, you'd better lay low." Mrs. Li, who was no longer elegant, was furious. She pulled out the earphone cable and threw it to the passenger seat. She stared at the red light with gloomy eyes. As the red light changed, a contemptuous smile appeared on her face. If his father wanted to embarrass himself at the family Xia, then so be it. The Li family was just her mother's family, and her own family was the Du family. As long as her husband was promoted, her son was outstanding, and her daughter married into a prestigious family, Li Chengluan's wish in this life would be fulfilled. The car drove into the downtown area, and the red lacquer door of the family Xia slowly closed. Xia Jinyuan helped the old lady back to her seat. She sighed and patted Xia Jinyuan's arm with a tired face. She said kindly, "Six, brother, I'm too soft-hearted. I made you suffer today. She won't come again in the future. You don't have to worry about your family. But you have to be careful of Li Chengluan. She's ruthless. In the past, she was ruthless outside, but now that she's old, she hides her ruthlessness inside. You have to be careful, especially that man and her family." Chapter 28-25. Old Madam had a very bad impression of her. From the day Mrs. Xiao brought her back to family Xia, Old Madam could tell that the newly married Mrs. Li was a ruthless woman. She said earnestly, "Because of your father, the Du family and our family Xia are at loggerheads. You have to be careful. Don't worry about what's going on outside. We're here. Nothing will happen. You're tired. I'll accompany you back to your room to rest." No, I'm going to chat with my granddaughter-in-law. You have good taste. Grandma likes girls like Xiao Yi who are determined and have their own opinions. They're not pushy. Let her chat with me. I'll be happy for a few days. Unfortunately, she has to leave tonight. Otherwise, I really want her to stay and sleep with me. When Old Madam thought of her future granddaughter-in-law sitting in the back garden, the tiredness on her face seemed to disappear. She joked, "You should work harder. Hurry up and marry Xiao Yi." What happened just now didn't seem to affect Old Madam at all. It was like a small stone thrown into the sea. It didn't even make a small splash. Yi Qian had already looked outside several times. She was a little worried. "Do you want me to go with you?" Li Jinyan saw her worry and said softly, "The two elders won't finish playing chess right away. Let's go take a look before we come back." Yi Qian really wanted to go and take a look. However, it was her first time visiting the Du family. It would be rude to rush over. Yi Qian pursed her lips and said softly, "No, let's wait." She heard family Xia's servant come over to tell Old Madam. She didn't listen much. She only heard the servant mention Mrs. Xiao and saw the smile in Old Madam's eyes disappear. Now that Old Madam had been gone for nearly half an hour and hadn't returned, Yi Qian was a little uneasy. Old Madam and Captain Xia didn't come back. It was most likely related to Mrs. Xiao. Yi Qian looked at the two old men who were focused on the game of Go, unaffected by the outside world. He took a few deep breaths in an attempt to calm himself down. The tea house was very simple, similar to the old man's tea house. A frosted glass sliding door separated the tea house into two separate spaces, one for playing chess and the other for drinking tea. Through the sliding door, one could only see the figures inside and outside. Even though he could only see her silhouette, Yi Qian did not dare to move. He sat there obediently and waited for Xia Jinyuan to return. 5 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan returned with Old Madam Dowager. The tea room immediately became lively. Old Madam Dowager tugged on Yi Qian's hand. When she touched the calluses on Yi Qian's hand, Old Madam Dowager couldn't help but tighten her grip. The calluses on her granddaughter-in-law's hands were in the same position as the calluses on Old Six's hands. She didn't know which unit Six's brother was serving in, nor did she know what kind of hard work he was doing. She only knew that he was serving in the border area, and there was a certain amount of danger. For a girl like her granddaughter-in-law to have such thick calluses, her life in the military academy must not have been easy. Come visit us often in the future. Grandma will make some nourishing food for you to nourish your body. Today, the kitchen made some nourishing soup for you. Drink a bowl at night to nourish your body. Don't be so polite with Grandma when you're home. We're all family. If you're too polite, it'll hurt our relationship. Whatever you want to eat, just tell me. Grandma will prepare it for you. It's said that the body is the capital of revolution. Only by taking care of your body can you be more loyal to the country. Chapter 28-26. The Xia family had always been dominated by males and females. Now that Yi Jian was here, she looked tough and gentle when she smiled. The more Old Madam looked at her, the more she liked her. Yi Qian, who had calmed down a lot, answered old Madame Fang's questions one by one. He wasn't in a hurry and answered them calmly. He didn't have stage fright. His natural and unrestrained manner made old Madame Fang and Aunt Fang secretly exchange happy glances. When the sun set, old Madame Fang didn't keep Yi Qian to chat with her. She said to Xia Jinyuan, "Accompany Xiao Yi for a walk around our house. Jin Yin is playing chess with two old men, so I won't ask him to go with you." She was creating an opportunity for her grandson. How could Xia Jinyuan not understand? He wanted to hold Yi Qian's hand and leave together. Yi Qian, who got up, pretended not to see and left the tea house under old Madame Fang's smiling gaze. Yuan really knows how to find a wife. Ning Fang, look at Xiao Yi. Io, this child is really beautiful. Her dark eyes are like stars. She's really beautiful. I like her the moment I see her. You only think that your granddaughter-in-law is beautiful? Didn't you notice anything else? Aunt Fang laughed along with old Madame Fang. Old Madame Fang wasn't wrong. Xiao Yi was indeed beautiful. She's good. She's good. She has a good temper. She doesn't talk much, but every word she says is precise. You can see that she's intelligent and reasonable. The more I look at her, the happier I am. I'm so happy. I'll probably laugh out loud in my dreams these few nights. Aunt Fang's smile deepened. When your granddaughter-in-law marries into our family, you'll be even happier. Yes, yes, yes. I've been waiting for this day. Ning Fang, quickly go to the kitchen and boil the soup carefully. I see that Xiao Ye's eyes are white. I'm afraid that she just came over and didn't notice that she got cold. When she gets home, I have to take care of her. Tell the kitchen to make another black chicken soup. I'll have her bring it home and drink it tomorrow. She's still young. Her body can handle it now, but when she gets older, she'll be at a disadvantage. I have to worry about her. The old madam instructed her meticulously, not forgetting to make the soup for the next day. It was obvious that she really liked Yi Qian. Xiao Jinyuan had always thought that his grandpa and grandma would definitely like his little fox. When they saw her today, the smiles in their eyes never stopped. Grandpa had the intention to drag the Devil King into the game of chess, so Grandma immediately ordered him to bring the little fox around the house, trying to create opportunities for him and the little fox to be alone together. Yi Qian also understood the intentions of the two elders. Because she understood, she pretended not to see Xia Jinyuan reaching out to hold her hand. I'm really surprised today. I didn't expect you to come to the old mansion with old master. I've been thinking about it, but I didn't bring you here. Today, old master finally fulfilled my wish. Little fox, does this mean that the old man has already acknowledged me as his grandson-in-law? He's very reassured to hand you over to me? Walking out of the back garden, Lieutenant Colonel Xia couldn't help but hold Yi Qian's hand. He was overjoyed. His deep eyes were as gentle as water, surrounding Yi Qian tightly. He didn't want to let her out of his sight for even a second. However, Yi Qian felt that he was thinking too much. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. My grandpa only said that he's here to visit Grandpa Xia. As for me, I'm here with him. Grandpa didn't say that he's very reassured about you. He was too proud, so proud that she couldn't help but want to give him a blow. Chapter 28-27. Xiao Jinyuan was not discouraged. Even if the old man was here to visit his grandfather, it did not matter. The girl he had always wanted to bring home to show his grandparents was also here. But it was still a pity. Actually, I would have preferred if I brought you home myself. It would have been more formal. Xiao Jinyuan walked through the shade of the willow trees and held Yi Qian's hand as they strolled through the home he had grown up in. It's a pity that I wasn't the one who brought you to the old mansion. Yi Qian did not care about this. She raised their interlocked hands and smiled. That's not a big deal. I wasn't nervous when I came here with my grandfather, but if I came back with you, I would definitely be so nervous that I would run away. This is pretty good. When we arrive at the door, I will carry you in. How could I let you run away? Xiao Jinyuan laughed deeply. He tightened his grip on her hand and whispered to her. After Grandpa and Grandma saw you, they pointed at me and said that I found a good granddaughter-in-law for them. In order to avoid any more trouble, they asked me to marry you as soon as possible. What do you think? I really want to fulfill their wishes. The sooner I marry you, the sooner I can let my wife and children warm my bed. Just thinking about those days makes me feel comfortable. Yi Qian, who was sensitive by nature, could feel that the two elders really liked her. Old Madame Fu was unwilling to let go of her hand. It was only after Captain Xia kept winking at her that old Madame Fu finally let go. Yi Qian blushed and could not help but laugh at the thought of his little actions in the tea room and how the two elders cooperated with each other. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she pursed her lips and smiled. Xia Jinyuan, who was waiting for her answer, mistakenly thought that she really wanted to get married early. His deep and dark eyes suddenly sparkled. He stopped walking forward and stopped holding her hand. When you arrive at the base and everything settles down, we will immediately submit a marriage application. What do you think? By the time everything settles down, it would be at least a year after graduation at the earliest. Yi Qian didn't have any objections to marriage now. After thinking for a while, she threw a very big problem to the man who was eager to get married soon. My dad said that it won't be too late for me to get married when I'm 26 or 27. He can't bear to get married too early. I'll be 23 years old after graduation. That means I'll be 26 or 27 years old. How are you going to convince my father to agree to our marriage earlier? Furthermore, she deliberately paused, waiting for him to ask if there was any other reason behind the word and what. Even though Xia Jinyuan knew that she was doing this on purpose, he was happy to accompany her. His deep voice was like sunshine, clear and full of love. The smile on Yi Qian's delicate face became even more radiant and enchanting, like lotus flowers blooming in the early morning, so beautiful that one could not help but want to take it for himself. Also, I feel that my father doesn't seem wanting to get married. He wants to find a son-in-law who marries into the family. Captain Xia, what would you do if my dad really asked for it? Son-in-law who married into the family. My future father-in-law might really have such thoughts. There were many outstanding people at the missile base, and all of them were capable. If my future father-in-law really had such thoughts, I wouldn't have to worry about not having a son-in-law. When Lieutenant Colonel Xia found out that Qin Xiu was his love rival, he did not even take it to heart. He really did. He had no choice. That was his future father-in-law. If he really had such thoughts, that would be even better. Chapter 28. He laughed. His voice was clear and melodious, like the notes jumping on the strings of a piano, full of joy. Yi Qian, who had wanted to scare him, was confused. Why is he laughing? Does my future father-in-law really want to find a live-in son-in-law? He showed great interest, and his expression was full of eagerness. Do you really have such an idea? Yi Jian, who sensed that something was wrong, reacted in an instant. She could not help but widen her eyes. If that's the case, I think I have a good chance of winning. Seeing her shocked expression, Xia Jinyuan laughed even louder. He raised his hand and rubbed the top of her head. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Why? I'm not good enough." "Very good." Yi Qian nodded and said, "I think my dad will definitely prioritize you." The reason was simple. Her dad still seriously believed that she had a crush on her captain, a crush on Captain Xia. Why would she need to have a crush on him? It was an open and above-board love. Prioritize me? That means my father-in-law has a very good impression of me. I'm not sure how good his impression of you is, but I can tell you a piece of good news that I forgot to tell you last time. Yi Qian sighed and said, "I don't know where my dad found out that I have a crush on our captain. He thinks I have a crush on our captain." Our captain was equivalent to Xia Jinyuan and himself. Lieutenant Colonel Xia's brain, which was good at leading troops in battle, worked quickly. In less than a second, he knew that his future father-in-law already knew who Yi Qian had a crush on her captain. It was him, Xia Jinyuan. When the good news came, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was laughing with his head raised, could no longer hold back the joy in his heart. He lifted Yi Jian up, hugged her waist, and spun her around on the spot. "A crush on me? Ha! I want to tell my future father-in-law that it wasn't your daughter who had a crush on me. It was me who had a crush on your daughter. It took me more than 1,000 days to get her." At this moment, Xia Jinyuan was much happier than when he found out that he was going to be promoted. He was full of joy and excitement. He had walked from one shore to the other and finally reached the other shore. His hopes had finally been reaped. Standing on the other shore of his life, he had reaped the most beautiful fruit. What could be happier than this? This was the moment when Xia Jinyuan's emotions were most exposed. He restrained himself and endured silently. He had the strongest soul and the strongest willpower of a soldier. He wrapped himself up in layers and used the hardest shell to carefully hide all his feelings and feelings. But today, he wanted to indulge himself for a short while and let the joy in his heart fly without restraint. He didn't know why, but he was so happy. Just like him, Yi Qian had also undergone anti-dizziness training. After a few laps, he didn't feel dizzy and could even stand steadily. Of course, Yi Qian was still in his arms, and the one standing steadily was Xia Jinyuan. His joy deeply infected her. Yi Qian, who was being carried high up, put her hands on his shoulders. Under the faint sunset, her picturesque eyebrows were smiling deeply, and her clear eyes were incomparably bright as she looked at him. Happy because of his joy, Yi Qian asked, "Why are you so happy?" "I don't know. I suddenly felt very happy. I couldn't control myself and wanted to laugh out loud." Xia Jinyuan was carrying her so high up that he had to look up to meet her eyes. The joy on his handsome and elegant face let Yi Qian know that he was really happy. She heard him laugh again and say, "As long as my future father-in-law agrees, why can't I be a live-in son-in-law?" Chapter 28-29. Yi Qian, who was infected by his joy, was overjoyed. You can't be the only one who's happy. Everyone in your family has to be happy too. Marriage isn't just between the two of us. Our families have to be taken into consideration. Captain Xia, are you sure you can become a live-in son-in-law? Xia Jinyuan, who had been hugging her waist tightly, looked into her eyes, which seemed to be filled with thousands of stars. His thin lips slowly curved upwards, revealing a hint of arrogance, and he said slowly, "Of course I'm sure. If I say it'll happen, it'll happen." "What? Do you think I'm joking?" She really thought he was joking, but now she knew that he wasn't. Every word he said was serious, and there was not a single joking word in it. Her eyes moved slightly, and the stars in her eyes were so bright that he could see the vast galaxy. Xia Jinyuan saw his own reflection in the middle of the galaxy, becoming her world. "I believe every word you say, and I believe that you can do it." But Yi Qian, who was smiling, gently traced his eyebrows with her fingers. She blinked slightly, and there was a hint of slyness in her eyes. "But I'm joking. My dad never said that he wanted Captain Xia to become a live-in son-in-law." As soon as she finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan immediately said, "That won't do. How can you joke about something you said? I'm definitely going to be a live-in son-in-law." "You want to be a live-in son-in-law so badly?" "Of course. We're both getting married. So what if I'm a live-in son-in-law? If my dad doesn't agree, what will you do?" "I'll wait until your father agrees." "Are you trying to cling to my family?" "Little fox, did you only realize that I'm clinging to your family now? It's too late. I've already clung to your family. You and my future father-in-law can't get rid of me." Xia Jinyuan, who was still smiling, put Yi Qian down and held her hand tightly. His wanton laughter gradually subsided, and he said in a low voice, "Grandpa Fu is too lonely. We have to spend more time with him. Father-in-law had a rough life in the first half of his life. Now that you're back and I'm by your side, both of us should accompany father-in-law." So what if he became a live-in son-in-law? He did not say what was on his mind, but Yi Qian understood. Because he understood, he was moved. Yi Qian looked at the man in front of her, who could always move her. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him gently on the cheek. "Thank you, Captain Xia," she said softly, full of tenderness. "In the future, my son-in-law can visit more often. My father and grandfather will be happy." The setting sun, like a thin layer of golden powder, shrouded the two people kissing under the willow branches. The two joined figures were stretched straight by the setting sun, like two lofty pine trees. No matter how much wind and rain they experienced, their deep roots were tightly entwined, and they would accompany each other until the end of time. After ending the deep kiss, Xia Jinyuan gently touched her moist lips and said softly, "The Fu family is too quiet. Grandpa Fu lives alone in Dangue Garden. He's too lonely. Family Xia is different. We have many brothers in our family, and Old Master has old Madame Fu by his side. There are grandchildren and grandnephews in the family. Our relatives who live in the capital come over from time to time. The house is always lively. So in the future, I'll accompany Old Master Fu with you." Yes, the Fu family was too quiet. It was so quiet that when she returned home for the first time, she saw the empty house and then looked at her grandfather, who was staggering back. She couldn't help but panic. Chapter 28:30. At that time, Grandpa felt like he was sitting at home waiting for death to come. He had already lost the will to live. Fortunately, she came back, and she was still held by Captain Xia, who encouraged her to bravely take the first step to go home. Fortunately, her return gave Grandpa a new lease of life. He was no longer waiting for death to come, but for new hope to come. In the future, Grandpa would definitely be happier if this man, who always held her hand and gave her unlimited courage, accompanied her. Captain Xia had a fatal attraction to people who were trapped in the dark and hopeless abyss. Just like her, she had once come here with revenge in her heart. In the end, she was slowly pulled out of the abyss by him, walked out of the darkness, and bathed in sunlight again. He often said that it was his fortune to meet her. In fact, she wanted to say that it was her fortune to meet him. Let's go and take a look in front. My grandmother has a greenhouse, and Grandpa has a vegetable garden next to it. The two of us love to plant vegetables together at home and cultivate some famous flowers. When we're old, we'll do the same. That's what we call enjoying our old age." His low voice gently knocked on her heart. Yi Qian let him hold her hand and let him lead her forward. This was the man she loved with all her heart. No matter where he held her hand, she would definitely stay close to him and never be separated from him in this lifetime. Yi Qian, who originally wanted to ask Madame Xiao, didn't ask anymore. The two of them were so happy now, so there was no need to mention someone who would affect their mood. Moreover, Captain Xia didn't take the initiative to mention it, so she didn't ask. Xia Jinyuan didn't take the initiative to mention it because he didn't want to affect their mood. Another reason was that he still didn't know how to explain to Yi Qian why he had to distance himself from Madame Xiao. He saw with his own eyes that his mother had an affair and even saw her sleeping on the same bed with her lover. No matter how thick-skinned he was, he didn't have the face to say it out loud. Until Yi Qian left the old mansion, Xia Jinyuan didn't mention Madame Xiao. He wasn't in a mood to talk about it. He felt tired just by saying one more word. With Li Jinyan driving, he did not send Yi Qian back to Dangue Garden. He only sent him to the door and watched as Li Jinyan started the car. He saw Yi Qian waving goodbye to him, Old Master and Old Madam. Then, the car left his sight. When the old madam saw the car leave, she sighed and said, "My good granddaughter-in-law has just left, and I've been thinking about her. Old man, why do you think our granddaughter-in-law is so likable? Whether it's her words or her actions, even if she's just standing there obediently, I still like her no matter how I look at her. You love the crow, and it's crow." Xiao Jinyuan laughed and praised himself. "Besides, Xiao Yi is the girl I like. How can you not like her? Even if you don't like Xiao Yi, your grandma and I will still like her. It has nothing to do with you." Old Master smiled and glanced at his thick-skinned grandson. Today, there were more wrinkles on his face. He said to old Madame Xiao, "I made an appointment with old Fu to go to Dangue Garden tomorrow. If we go tomorrow, we'll be able to see our granddaughter-in-law again." Xiao Jinyuan helped the two elders back to the house and said calmly, "I'm sorry to disappoint you. Your granddaughter-in-law won't be at Dangue Garden tomorrow." At the mention of this, Old Madam and Old Master looked disappointed. Old Master reminded Xia Jinyuan, "Next time when our granddaughter-in-law comes back, let me know in advance. Your father and I will go and see her." Chapter 28:31. You can't say that you are going to see her. You have to say that you're going to see old Fu. Otherwise, she will feel guilty. Old Madame Fu reminded him, and turned to look at her grandson, who had been taking care of them since he arrived home. She sighed and said, "Sixth brother, you should go to the hospital to see her. I won't force you if you don't acknowledge her as your mother, but she was sent to the hospital from our house today. You should go and see her." The smile in old Master Xia's eyes tightened when he heard this. How did she end up in the hospital? Old Master Xia had always been with old Master Xia, so old Madame Fu didn't tell her ex-daughter-in-law that old Master Xia had sent her to the hospital. Old Master Xia frowned when he heard this. First of all, we didn't hit her. Second of all, we didn't scold her. Why was she sent to the hospital? She ran over on such a hot day. Maybe she had a heat stroke. I'll let sixth brother take a look. Sigh, since she gave birth to sixth brother. Old Madame Fu's sight didn't soften Xia Jinyuan's heart. He supported the two elders all the way to the stone pavilion in the front yard and sat down to enjoy the cool air. Then he smiled and said, "You don't have to go. If you go, you will be involved with her again. I made it very clear. She knows that our family Xia has done everything we can for her. If she continues to be unforgiving, she will be the one who suffers in the end, not us." Sixth brother is right. Old Madam, you are too soft-hearted. You were an iron lady when you were young. Why are you becoming more soft-hearted and unprincipled as you get older? This is not good. If you don't even have your principles, you will be in trouble. Old Master Xia agreed with his grandson. Since they were going to break up, they had to do it cleanly. They didn't want to be like a tangled thread in the end. Mrs. Xiao hoped that her son would come to the hospital to visit her. Even when Mrs. Li brought Du Jiai back to the hospital, she didn't see her son. Mrs. Qin's birthday party ended at 10 o'clock in the evening. The young people continued to play in groups while Mrs. Li, who looked a little cold, brought Du Jiai to the hospital. Du Jiai, who had come along reluctantly, arrived at the entrance of the hospital. Her face was still a little twisted. Mrs. Qin hinted at Qin Xiu to take her out to have fun, but before she could even open her mouth, her mother rejected on her behalf and said, "It's not convenient tonight. One of my good friends isn't feeling well and is in the hospital alone. My good friend has always doted on Jiai. Now that she's sick, I have to take her to see her." Du Jiai immediately understood why he refused and why he said those words. She understood, but then she remembered that she had missed her date with Qin Xiu. She was a little depressed all the way, and when she arrived at the entrance of the hospital, she couldn't help but throw a tantrum. "Mom, if you want to go in alone. I won't go." After saying that, he really turned around to leave. She really wanted to leave. She wanted to go back to see Qin Xiu. She wanted to walk with him and take the opportunity to deepen their understanding of each other. Du Jiai. Mrs. Li, who had already entered the hospital, immediately turned her head when she heard Du Jiai's words. Seeing that her daughter was really leaving, her face darkened. Try taking another step. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely cold. Du Jiai, who was about to leave, was frightened. She gritted her teeth and had to turn around. I'll go, okay? Aunt Xiao isn't feeling well, and I'm also worried. But Qin Xiu. Chapter 28:32. Du Jiai, your brother is still in the Guangnan military region. He hasn't come back yet. What kind of brother is Qin Xiu to you? Madame Li, who had a cold face, heard that Du Jiai even lost the restraint that a girl should have for Qin Xiu, and her eyes became gloomy. She looked coldly at Du Jiai, who was throwing a tantrum. Don't do anything that will make others look down on you, and don't do anything that will make me lose face. After saying this coldly and softly, Madame Li turned and walked towards the inpatient building. She didn't glare or scold Madame Li, but Du Jiai was very scared. She hurried to catch up with Madame Li, took her arm, and acted like a spoiled child. Mom, I was wrong. I deeply realized that I was wrong. Please calm down and forgive me. Since you have told Madame Qin, I naturally have to accompany you to see Aunt Xiao. How can I go back to see Qin Xiu? I must accompany you to visit Auntie Xiao. Speaking of Qin Xiu, she almost shouted, Brother Qin Xiu again. Before Madame Li glanced at her, She quickly stopped and narrowly avoided being criticized. Madame Li knew her daughter's thoughts very well, so she strongly supported her. However, her support didn't mean that Du Jiai would shamelessly throw herself at him, nor did it mean that she would lose all of a girl's modesty in exchange for a man's charitable gaze. Tonight, she finally saw how far her daughter, who she had always been proud of, could go for a man. She didn't even have the mood to socialize anymore. It was not easy for her to endure until the end. Even if she heard Madame Qin's hint, she knew that she had to take her daughter out. If she didn't, the whole capital would know that her daughter, Li Chenglan, had lost the restraint of a girl for Qin Xiao. Now was not the time to settle accounts with her daughter. She had to see Shu Man first. Seeing that her daughter admitted her mistake, the anger in Madame Li's heart dissipated a little, and her eyes were no longer so gloomy. Spend more time with your Annie Xiao. She loves you so much, and now she is alone in the hospital. You have to talk to her more, so that her love won't be in vain. Seeing this, Du Jiai couldn't hold back the question in her heart. She asked softly, "Mom, your feelings for Annie Xiao? Why don't I understand?" He said that he was good to Annie Xiao and would smile when Annie Xiao was in trouble. However, when Annie Xiao was really in trouble, he couldn't help but stand up to help her. The more she watched over the past few years, the more confused she became. Mrs. Li entered the elevator and waited until the elevator reached the 3rd floor before she replied calmly, "You don't need to understand. You only need to know that I really care about your Annie Xiao and that I don't like her." Oh, Du Jiai knew that she wouldn't get an answer, so she shut her mouth and didn't ask again. However, he was even more confused. It was true that he liked her, but it was also true that he didn't like her. Did he like her or didn't like her? Did he like her or didn't like her? Sometimes, Mrs. Li couldn't tell the difference. However, she knew that every time she saw her best friend who was better than her in all aspects when she was young, she felt very satisfied in her heart. She didn't tell that kind of satisfaction to others, even her own husband. She just secretly rejoiced in her heart. However, when she really saw Xiao Schumann in trouble, she couldn't help but stand up for her. Every time she stood up for her, she couldn't help but ask herself, what's the point of doing this over and over again? Wouldn't it be better to just not see her again? She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. This was the only thing she was interested in now. Since she couldn't do it, she would continue. Chapter 28:33. There were two sides to life. One was real, and the other was fake. Mrs. Li was both real and fake to Ms. Xiao. After so many years, Ms. Xiao might have known Mrs. Li's hypocrisy, and Mrs. Li might have known Ms. Zhao's pretense. The two women, whose ages added up to more than 100 years old, were open-minded and indifferent to some things. They didn't have the time to care about it. This was why Du Jiai said that she couldn't understand the relationship between Mrs. Li and Ms. Xiao. It was because the young Du Jiai was far less determined than the two women. At night, the hospital was terribly cold. The long corridor was lit up by the white lights, making the surroundings empty and spacious. But it was spacious, but it was still very depressing to walk in. Hearing the footsteps outside, Ms. Xiao sighed while she was on the phone. "Well, I heard Chenglan's footsteps. Let's hang up." She didn't know who was on the other side of the phone, nor did she know what he said. Ms. Zhao's face was gloomy. "What if I say that I know all about it?" Commander-in-Chief Xia, on the other side of the phone, was really shocked by her words. He frowned and said, "Since you know all about it, why did you let yourself be with her? It's been decades. I've already gone through most of my life with her. I didn't know it when I was young. What's the use of knowing it now that I'm old? The past is the past. Even if it was a trap set by her, I wouldn't have been fooled if it weren't for my own problem. Old Xia, not all the fault is Chenglan's. It's my fault. It has nothing to do with others. If I hadn't been so arrogant and conceited, those things wouldn't have happened. I've known Chenglan for many years. I know how good she is to me and how bad she is to me. I still have the same words. My life is almost over. I don't have so much energy to care about those things. What's more, Madame Li was already standing at the door, but she saw that Madame Xiao was talking on the phone inside. She stopped and asked Du Jiai to wait outside until Madame Xiao finished the call. Madame Xiao, who was waving her hand outside, did not avoid it. She maintained the same posture as when she was on the phone just now, but lowered her voice a little. What's more, I know that old Du is secretly investigating Yuan, and I also know that Li Chuhai has returned. It's even more impossible for me to alienate Cheng Lan. Xia Jinyuan, who was also standing next to the phone and listening to the hands-free call, had his eyes darken slightly. He quickly wrote 2 words on the paper. Why did old Du investigate Yuan? Who else did he investigate? There were only 2 words on the paper, Yi Qian and a question mark. Xia Jinyuan was not afraid that the Du family would investigate him, but he was worried that Yi Qian would be implicated because of his relationship with him. I didn't hear that he was investigating anyone else. I accidentally heard that he was investigating Yuan. Okay, it's not convenient for me to talk about it now. Tonight, Madame Xiao sighed softly again. There was a faint smile on her pale face. Thank you for calling me tonight. Don't worry, I won't go to the old mansion again. Yuan, I won't see him again. If there's anything important in the future, I'll contact you directly. She ended the call without saying goodbye and deleted the call record. Chapter 2834. Du Jiai was the only one outside the ward. Mrs. Li was nowhere to be seen. The door was pushed open and Du Jiai walked into the room with a gust of fragrant wind. Mrs. Xiao looked at the young girl who was as bright as the rising sun and full of vitality. She couldn't help but smile. What energetic young people. Only when she was with these young people would she feel youthful and feel that she hadn't aged. Annie Xiao, are you okay? Du Jiai, who was sitting by the bed, looked at Mrs. Xiao worriedly. She held Mrs. Xiao's right hand tightly and said softly, have a good rest. Don't think too much. You still have me and my mother. With us by your side, you'll definitely get better soon. Jiai is so considerate. Hearing your words, Annie Xiao's worries are mostly gone. Where's your mother? Wasn't she outside just now? My mother said that you must not have had a good dinner. She was afraid that you would be hungry, so she hurried out to buy you a bowl of porridge. Annie Xiao, you must finish it later so that you can recover faster. Du Jiai really liked to get along with Mrs. Xiao and was not being perfunctory. Mrs. Xiao was indeed very good to Du Jiai. On Du Jiai's birthday, she would receive a birthday gift from Mrs. Xiao from abroad. It was exquisite, luxurious, and dreamy. Mrs. Xiao always gave her a big surprise. However, Xia Jinyuan never received it. It was as if Mrs. Xiao had forgotten about it. This was probably one of the reasons why Du Jiai was afraid of Xia Jinyuan. Mrs. Xiao listened quietly, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Whether it was good or bad, decades had passed. It was too difficult for her to become good friends with someone of the same age who she could chat with peacefully and who also knew many secrets about each other. Therefore, whether it was good or bad, he would just let it pass. Mrs. Li, who came late, was originally empty-handed. When she appeared in front of the ward, she was holding a bowl of barley porridge. When she saw her daughter talking to Mrs. Xiao softly, she was no longer as impetuous as before. After walking out of the banquet, a faint smile finally appeared on her face. Mrs. Qin asked me why you didn't come over. I told her that you had an old illness and had to be hospitalized. She said that she would come to the hospital to see you tomorrow. Mrs. Li was very busy. She opened the table beside the bed and put the porridge on it. She washed the spoon and put it in the bowl. Eat your favorite barley porridge. Mrs. Qin, you're too polite. I'll contact her tomorrow morning. Madame Xiao tasted the porridge. It tasted good. Not bad. Although it's not as good as yours, it's not bad. I know you're picky, so I didn't buy it. Let Mrs. Qin come tomorrow. You can talk to her about Yuan. He went too far today. He made you so angry that you didn't come to the hospital. How can you let him go so easily? Mrs. Li's eyes were a little fierce. After she finished speaking coldly, she turned to her daughter. I was so angry today that I almost had to go to the hospital. I really did not want to lose my composure at Mrs. Qin's birthday party. Jiai, tell Aunt Xiao, how did you make your mother angry today? Du Jiai bit her lower lip and didn't dare to speak. Madame Li, who glanced over, sneered and said, Today, I've lost all my face because of her. For the young diplomat of the Qin family, she can really lower herself. She doesn't have any girl's modesty. Chapter 28:35. At the mention of tonight, Madame Li still didn't have a good expression. She was so gloomy that it seemed like she would be struck by lightning in the next second. One has no filial piety, and the other has no restraint. Tell me, how do we give birth to two troublesome children? When Madame Qin comes tomorrow, it's appropriate to talk about a yuan. With Madame Qin's influence in the capital, if she wants to help you, a yuan will definitely come over and apologize. This brat from the Xia family was too arrogant. She had to take him down a notch. She really couldn't swallow her anger. Chenglan, a yuan isn't close to me. You heard what old Madam said today. If I dare to say anything bad about a yuan, my past will be exposed. You all calm down. I've already thought it through. Why are you still so stubborn? Madame Zhao's words made Madame Li's heart hurt even more. So you're saying that I can't do anything about your son? How dare you? No. Although a yuan and I are mother and son, we don't have any contact. Although he doesn't acknowledge me, I have to acknowledge him. Chenglan, for my sake, don't be so calculated with my son, okay? There was a hint of unwillingness in Madame Zhao's eyes as she looked at Madame Li. After a while, Madame Li nodded. Madame Zhao immediately restrained the unyielding look in her eyes and was as gentle as before. As for Jiai's matter, you don't have to be angry. The young master of the Qin family is currently the most promising young master in the capital. Jiai has good taste to fall in love with such a promising diplomat. You have to know that there are countless young ladies in and out of the capital who want to marry the young master of the Qin family. If our Jiai doesn't perform well, how can she compete? However, Jiai, Aunt Xiao wants to remind you that you're very outstanding and have a unique advantage. So you don't have to lower yourself and cater to the young master of the Qin family. You have to have your own personality and use your unique side to attract Qin Xiao. If you reduce yourself to be no different from ordinary women, then in the eyes of the young diplomat of the Qin family, you're just an ordinary girl. You're not attractive at all, and there's nothing about you that can move his heart. Don't turn yourself into an ordinary girl. It's difficult for an ordinary girl to attract the attention of an outstanding man. You have to have your own unique point of light. Then you'll be more likely to get the happiness you want. Du Jiai, on the other hand, immediately understood where she had gone wrong. It was as if she was teaching her own daughter. Seeing this, Madame Li knew that her daughter had understood. She said to Madame Xiao and Madame Qin, and I was afraid that she would do something unrestrained. That. You must remember what your Aunt Xiao said. Du Jiai nodded obediently. She agreed with Madame Zhao's words. I know what to do now. Thank you. News 2. How can you be sure that you can get married with Qin Xiao? Madame Li glared at her. She was both amused and angry. It's not too late to say this to your Aunt Xiao after you get married. Madame Xiao also laughed. For a moment, the ward was full of joy and harmony, sweeping away the previous depression. Chapter 28:36. In the dead of the night, Mrs. Xiao looked at Mrs. Li, who was staying at the hospital to accompany Mrs. Li. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. No one could understand the relationship between her and Chenglan. They were on guard against each other and helped each other. She would sincerely help Chenglan solve some of her life problems, and Chenglan would also sincerely help her. Others might not understand this relationship, but how could she understand it? After returning to the family Xia mansion, Commander-in-Chief Xia hung up the phone and chatted with Xia Jinyuan in the front yard. They didn't care about the relationship between Mrs. Xiao and Mrs. Li. What they cared about was, why did the Deputy Chief of Staff want to investigate Xia Jinyuan? Since he is investigating in secret, let him. Your information is the highest military secret in our army. If a mere Deputy Chief of Staff like him can easily find out about it, our confidential work will no longer be confidential. We can put aside the issue of him for the time being. As for Li Chuhai, we need to keep an eye on him. Xia Jinyuan didn't know this person, so he naturally didn't know his name, but now he knew. If he didn't have a guilty conscience back then, even if he knew that you were investigating him, he wouldn't have immediately retired from the army. When he found out that you were investigating him, he used his relationship with Old Man Lee to retire from the army due to health reasons. In less than 3 months, he was arranged to go abroad. The fact that he left in such a hurry proves that there is indeed something wrong with him. In that case, your investigation is completely in line with the rules. Even if he has a grudge, he can only blame himself for his dirty hands. Commander-in-Chief Xia found out that Yi Qian came to the mansion with Old Man Lee, so he took some time out of his busy schedule to go back to the mansion at night. After hearing what happened during the day, Commander-in-Chief Xia's expression changed slightly when Xia Jinyuan mentioned the name Li Chuhai. Commander-in-Chief Xia quietly listened to Xia Jinyuan's words and remained silent. He thought about some things that had happened a long time ago, but he could still remember the past. He really didn't expect Li Chuhai to have the guts to come back. Back then, Old Man Li had spent a lot of effort to get him out of the country. He didn't expect him to come back after more than 20 years. Xia Jinyuan could tell that Commander-in-Chief Xia's silence contained some hidden sharpness, and this sharpness came from the name Li Chuhai. Dad, what are you thinking about? Could it be that Li Chuhai has something else to do besides what you said? Xia Jinyuan had already sensed something unusual. His eyes moved slightly, and he smiled faintly. Or is it inconvenient for you to say it? And it's also inconvenient for me to know? Trying to trick me? Commander-in-Chief Xia glanced at him and said, "You have nothing to do with him, so don't try to get information out of me." So, there really was a big problem. Xia Jinyuan refilled the empty teacup and said with a smile, "Since you've said so, I naturally won't interfere. I can tell that you have scruples about Li Chuhai, so I know what to do." The tea was poured into the cup, and the sound of the water was slightly shallow. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the empty teacup and refilled it. His expression was slightly cold. Li Chuhai was the youngest senior colonel in the army back then, and because of Old Man Li, it could be said that his future was absolutely smooth. However, because of a major incident that alarmed the Great Hall that year, it involved so many people that even the normal operations of the military at that time had problems. Chapter 28:37. That year, countless people were removed from their positions and investigated. In the end, they were sent to prison, and several high-ranking personnel were directly executed in secret. Even the international community did not know about the major incident that happened in the domestic army that year. Today, all the paper information about the major case was destroyed, and the most important information was stored in electronic files. Since then, it had become a piece of history that no one knew about. It was something that happened more than 20 years ago. If it weren't for the fact that Li Chuhai was the only name that had escaped from the case, Commander-in-Chief Xia would have already forgotten about it. Now that he's back, your mother will know that Old Du is secretly investigating you. This is what I'm most worried about. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked forward with a cold gaze. His fingers tapped lightly on the stone table, and the corners of his mouth were pressed tightly together. He did not tell Xia Jinyuan that Li Chuhai's return really shocked him. Was because the Military Disciplinary Commission's investigation of Martyr Sun Xueqing's case involved Li Chuhai. Martyr Sun Xueqing was also involved in a major case back then, and she was an undercover agent. Li Chuhai was even a senior colonel in Martyr Sun Xueqing's army at that time. Now that the Military Disciplinary Commission's investigation had reached another critical point, if Li Chuhai returned to the country and found out about the Military Disciplinary Commission's investigation, it was hard to guarantee that he would not go abroad again. Thinking of this, Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had planned to rest in the old mansion tonight, stood up. "You should rest early. I have something to deal with here." He got up quickly and left in a hurry. He did not say anything unnecessary and left the old mansion. He asked the guard to drive him to the Military Disciplinary Commission. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the stone pavilion, seemed to be deep in thought. Then his slender fingers drew on the stone table and wrote the name Li Chuhai. His fingers tapped lightly on the stone table, and there was no rhythm to the low and shallow sound. The intervals were sometimes short and sometimes urgent, and his dark gaze was fixed on the position where his fingers wrote the 3 words Li Chuhai. When he wrote the 3 words Li Chuhai again, Xia Jinyuan's brows revealed a hint of coldness. There was something wrong with this person, and it was not a small problem. However, this was not a question that he could answer. It was a question that even old man Xia had to be careful about. Retiring immediately after entering the investigation department and then leaving the country in a hurry, the water here is very deep. Xia Jinyuan tidied up the tea set on the stone table, stood up, and walked out of the stone pavilion. The water is too deep for him to wade in, so there is no need to think too much about it. It was better to think about the upcoming international tournament. The competition was the next most important task. They couldn't win beautifully, and they couldn't lose too badly. They had to go with the mentality of learning, and they had to grasp the degree of winning and losing well. This wasn't an easy task. Major General Yang believed that there was no problem that could not be solved. Standing in front of the fully equipped special forces, he smiled and said, "When we go out, we'll just learn. Don't fall out with them and make them bleed. That would be ugly. We want friendship first and martial arts competition second. Do you understand?" Of course, since the competition is a competition, martial arts is still very important. We can't just compete for friendship. That would make us look weak and lose the might of our country's soldiers. All right, I won't say too much, lest you feel pressured. Go ahead and compete. We'll wait for your return in the country. Standing in front, Yi Qian silently summarized the Major General's words into one sentence. Learning is important, but you can't be bullied. You still have to fight if you need to, but don't be found out. Keep a low profile and study hard. Chapter 28:38. The battle zone this time was located in the primeval forest of eastern Estonia, which was known as the world's worst combat environment. On the way to the U.S., Xia Jinyuan led his team of 8 special forces to formulate several sets of targeted tactics, especially the border country that spied on China from the sky and escaped in the end. The 8 of them studied the special forces carefully and then formulated a series of targeted tactics. The plane heading to the U.S. was not a military plane, but a civil one. The difference was that there were no ordinary passengers on the plane except for the special forces. It was equivalent to a chartered flight to a foreign country. For safety and confidentiality, it was normal to charter a flight to a foreign country. Xia Jinyuan's deep and steady voice could be heard from the cockpit. Everyone's attention was focused on him. His team members listened attentively, fearing that they would miss out on a single word. The SFS Special Border Defense Force is a paramilitary special forces. It was established in 1962 and is engaged in special reconnaissance, direct action, unconventional warfare, and secret operations. The military has analyzed that the border army is more likely to send this special force. On the plane, Xia Jinyuan began to talk about which special forces the 12 countries would send this time. There was no other way. Every country was very secretive, and it was difficult for the Chinese military to know. Just like how other countries did not know which troops they would send, they could only guess. Every country could only guess the known special forces of other countries. As for the unknown, for example, China's most mysterious snowfield brigade, even the Chinese military and civilians did not know about it, let alone the other countries. The other countries did not know which special forces China would send to participate in the competition, and China did not know either. It was not until last night that Xia Jinyuan received some information from the military to see which special forces the 12 countries would send to participate in the competition. Friendship comes first, competition comes second. Don't take it to heart. Since it's a competition and learning, it has to be something. The pilot who died in the border country happened to be a member of the SFS. If this special forces team comes to participate in the competition, all of us have to be on guard against sneak attacks. The possibility of this is very high, more than 90%. They shot us in the back, so we don't have to rush to win back our face. We'll find a perfect opportunity to win back all the face we've lost. We'll also have to make them suffer in silence, unable to voice out their grievances. As an unconventional combat force, the SFS Special Border Defense Team will definitely play a lot of tricks. However, our ancestors were the best at the art of war. In our generation, we have mastered it to the point of perfection. The 36 stratagems and 72 moves will all be doubled, so at this point, Xia Jinyuan's deep and dark gaze swept across his comrades. His thin lips curved slightly, and in his special combat uniform, he suddenly had a hair-raising sharpness. So be bold and go all out. Don't let yourself suffer too much. Of course, it doesn't matter if we suffer a little loss on the surface, as long as we earn it back. Don't go out and come back in one breath. Yi Qian couldn't help but smile when he heard this. It was best to describe Captain Xia with a phrase from later generations. At that moment, Captain Xia was really black-bellied and very energetic. The more one looked at him, the more one felt that his personal charm was admirable. At the very least, she was deeply in love with him. Chapter 28:39. Li Jinyan noticed Yi Qian's expression and rubbed his temples helplessly. Last night, Grandpa had said that it wouldn't be too late for Yi Qian to get married at the age of 28. Looking at the situation now, sigh, she could even get married at the age of 25. His heart was all on Q King. SFS is our main target. Now let's talk about what we should focus on learning. Learn, my comrades, we should focus on learning. We should learn while we fight. Don't just focus on learning and not know how to fight, or only know how to fight and not learn. Before entering the competition, Xia Jinyuan, as the battle commander, didn't put pressure on his comrades. Instead, he joked and chatted casually. When he spoke, he liked to look at each of his comrades' faces. Every time he passed by Yi Qian, his gaze would linger for a moment. Just like now, as he spoke, he looked at Yi Qian again. When he looked into her eyes, her beautiful face was reflected in his dark eyes. Even his cold gaze couldn't help but soften. Every time Xia Jinyuan looked at Yi Qian, she would immediately look at him. Separated by the small conference table on the plain, their gazes were exceptionally sweet. Yesterday, Yi Qian went to family Xia's old mansion. The two of them seemed to have become closer and more inseparable. This time, we have two main targets. One is this country's special forces, and the other is this. There were 12 countries, and there were 12 national flags. Xia Jinyuan pointed at two of the flags. We can't miss out on the important targets. These two countries were both military powerhouses. Every special forces soldier was the best of the best. Now it was up to them to see if they could learn anything. Li Jinyan saw that he kept staring at his sister. He shook the military map in his hand and reminded Q King, who was sitting opposite him, to stop staring at his sister. However, he realized that his reminder was of no use. Thus, his brother-in-law, Li Jinyan, took the next step. His gaze swept over the map on the conference table, and he pointed at a certain spot, which was the flag of a certain country. The special forces of their country are also very strong. They are also people we can learn from. He was talking about a country in Asia, which was close to Yunnan. The special forces of this country had once caused the French side to suffer a great loss. They were like chameleons that appeared in the jungle, silently hiding, and silently leaving after they succeeded. When Yi Qian heard this, he immediately turned to look in the direction Li Jinyan was pointing. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was sitting across from him, had no other way to deal with his brother-in-law's move other than knowing what was going on. When Li Jinyan saw that Yi Qian's attention had turned to him, he glanced at Xia Jinyuan and said calmly, "They are good at sneak attacks and ambushes. We have to be careful too. They like to work in groups and won't act alone. Once we discover their tracks, we have to react fast enough to prevent them from dragging us to our deaths. We are good at sneak attacks and ambushes. If they really want to target us, we have to make the first move. But we have to be discreet and not let them know who we are. When it comes to group competitions like shooting competitions, it doesn't matter if we hide our skills or not. We have to show them when it's time to do so. Being overly humble will be seen as weakness." Li Jinyan's words were approved by all his comrades, including Xia Jinyuan. Chapter 28:40. Li Jinyan was cold and introverted. Even his words were extremely cold. As soon as he opened his mouth, the invisible coldness that made people's hearts tighten would spontaneously arise. It would make people immediately focus and not dare to be distracted for even half a second. Other than themselves, even Yi Qian didn't notice the little competition between the brother-in-law and brother-in-law. She listened very carefully and stared at Li Jinyan without blinking. Her expression was so serious that even Xia Jinyuan, who intended to compete with Li Jinyan, felt a little guilty. After clearing his throat and completely restraining his emotions, Li Jinyan continued. The IKA assault competition is famous worldwide for its high difficulty, high intensity, long distance, multi-topic, cross-soldier, and real guns and bullets are thrilling and far more tragic than one's psychological endurance. Therefore, it is also called the competition without death by the military of various countries. This was the first time that China sent special forces to participate in the competition, and it was at such a time. The military of various countries were watching closely. If they were too strong, they would be too high-profile, and if they were too modest, they would be too weak and appear easy to bully. The effect that the military wanted was to not be too strong and become a target, and not be too weak and become a joke. They firmly followed the policy of following the rules and carried it out to the end. Every time Yi Jian heard words like, "You can't be too strong, but you can't be too low-key either," she couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. This was really difficult for Captain Xia, who was the commander-in-chief of the battle. To do this was really difficult. The military really knew how to make things difficult for people. However, she believed in Captain Xia's ability. With his black-bellied nature, it was really not difficult for him to handle these things. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the discussion about the special forces that the 12 countries might send was finished. They boarded the plane at 10 o'clock and didn't even have lunch. They only knew what time it was when they looked at the time. The flight attendants on the plane knew the special nature of this batch of passengers, so they didn't dare to disturb them. They just waited for the people inside to come out. They had lunch at 3 o'clock. After lunch, they had about 3 hours of discussion. They dissected all the details again and again, so that everyone had a rough idea of what to expect. It was their first time participating in the competition. The more they knew, the more confident they would be. With confidence, their morale would be high, and they would be able to face it calmly. After ending the hours-long discussion, Yi Qian looked out the window of the plane. A day had passed in the blink of an eye. When it was time to sleep, Yi Qian had just laid down and covered herself with a thin blanket when she felt someone standing beside her. The familiar scent made her smile involuntarily. Before he could speak, she got up. "Come over here." Xia Jinyuan bent down, so close that his thin lips brushed against her cheek. "There are some things I want to talk to you about in private." Did they still need to talk in private? Was he afraid that she would be in a bad mood? Yi Qian got up and walked out with him. This time, they walked to the outside cabin, which was the business class that passengers usually sat in. The business class cabin was not as spacious as the first class cabin, but Xia Jinyuan preferred it because he could sit very close to Yi Qian. When the flight attendants outside saw the special passengers coming out, they immediately walked over. However, before they could get close, Xia Jinyuan raised his hand slightly to stop them. When they arrived at the airport tomorrow, they would immediately head to the battle zone. Xia Jinyuan had asked Yi Qian to come out alone because he wanted to have a chat with her. He wanted to know if she had any psychological burdens. After all, she was the youngest and the only female soldier in the entire team. He needed to pay close attention to her. Of course, he also had a little selfish motive. It was only 8 o'clock in the evening. He could talk to her alone for an hour before going to bed. Chapter 28:41. But he couldn't let her see through his selfishness. If she did, she probably wouldn't come out with him. The business class seats were quite spacious. When the two of them sat down, Xia Jinyuan habitually leaned towards Yi Qian. Their shoulders naturally touched, and they tilted their heads slightly. They could hear each other's breathing clearly. They turned on the night lights, and the dim light shone on each other's delicate eyebrows. They sat in the quiet business class. The stars were shining brightly outside, but the inside was silent. There was an ambiguous atmosphere in the middle of the night. The atmosphere was there, but the topic of conversation had nothing to do with ambiguity. When the two of them sat down, Xia Jinyuan said with a slightly serious expression, "We arrived in Estonia at 5 o'clock in the morning. Then we immediately took a helicopter to the eastern primeval forest. Yiqian, are you ready? Do you have any psychological burdens? Since there's still time, you can tell me if you have any doubts or burdens." She didn't say much during the day, so he couldn't figure out what she was thinking. Yiqian sat down and relaxed. When she heard him ask if she had any psychological burdens, Yiqian didn't hesitate at all. She smiled and said, "No, I really don't have any psychological burdens. I'm not nervous either. What's going to happen will happen. Since it's going to happen, I'll fight it well and complete the competition well. Other than that, I don't have any other thoughts. If you really want to say something, I've been thinking that the military wants us to be not too strong, but not too weak. It's actually more difficult. Either we're strong or we're weak. How can we be neither strong nor weak? I'm worried about your side. After all, you're the overall commander." Her tone was very calm and relaxed. There was no sense of stagnation. In other words, the male soldiers had been discussing for the entire day, but she was only worried about her side. Xia Jinyuan, who had a deep gaze, suddenly smiled. He raised his hand and gently rubbed her head. He said softly, "There's no problem on my side. We just need to let others see that our overall strength is neither strong nor weak. That's enough. Because this is the first time our army is going out of the country to participate in a competition, the military needs to get a feel of the situation. They also need us to be the vanguard. That's why they sent us out of the country, so that the military can have a feel of the situation. In the future, our army will only go out of the country to participate in more and more competitions. At the same time, we will also become stronger and stronger. This time, winning is not the goal. Learning is the most important." Hearing this, Yiqian couldn't help but laugh again. Because there were no other comrades in front of her, she didn't hide her smile. She smiled until her eyes curved like a crescent moon, bright and clear. I know. On the surface, friendship comes first, and the competition comes first. Studying is important, but you can't just focus on studying and ignore the competition. I know. Xia Jinyuan knew why she was laughing when he heard it. The military has its own concerns. We just need to cooperate. Right now, our country's military strength hasn't reached the point where we can strongly stand out and express our position. So, duplicity is also a strategic policy. It's our tradition to keep a low profile and make a fortune in silence. IKA assault is a competition without death, and this is the first time we're participating. Compared to those countries that have participated before, we're actually very passive. If we suddenly make a strong appearance, we're bound to become the target of public criticism. We'll lose the advantage of secretly observing others. Therefore, we'll do everything in secret in the early stages and slowly reveal our strength in the later stages. Chapter 2842. As a battle commander, Lieutenant Colonel Xia was not an ordinary man. He was brave and resourceful, and was even more adept at psychological warfare. He was the type of person who was extremely meticulous in everything he did, leaving no traces behind. With him leading the team, the military was rather reassured. Neither too strong nor too weak was a problem, but with him leading the team, Yiqian believed that he had the ability to complete the mission given to him by the military. The entire team also believed in him. This trust was so strong that it was impenetrable. After he finished speaking in a low voice, he raised his eyebrows slightly and asked Yiqian with a smile, "Do you have confidence in me?" He was smiling, but there was also a trace of sharpness in his eyes. When he finished speaking, his ink-like eyes were pitch black and gloomy. He stared at Yiqian without blinking, as if there was a deep meaning hidden in his eyes. Yiqian, who was tilting her head, also looked at him without blinking. She answered slowly, "Captain Xia, you are the person I trust the most in this world. I will support and trust you unconditionally in everything you do and every decision you make. What about our comrades? Do you have confidence? He asked again with a heavy gaze. Do you trust them as much as you trust me? Yes, they're my comrades. They are comrades that I can give my life to. I trust them. I believe in them. On the battlefield, I trust them as much as I trust you. There is no distinction. Yi Qian answered without hesitation. His voice was powerful and resonant, without a trace of consideration. Loyal to the motherland, loyal to the people, we live and die together. These are my comrades. I trust them as much as they trust me. I am very satisfied with your answer, and I feel more at ease. Her firm voice and fearless gaze made the smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes deepen. His dark eyes stared deeply at her, and his mellow voice sounded like a cello. You are me, and I am you. Your life belongs to me, and my life belongs to you. Remember what I said, and remember that you must not shoulder all the dangers alone again. He was referring to the last time they had met He Xiazi, and how Yi Qian had acted without consulting him. Yi Qian tensed up at the mention of the past. She had already realized her mistake, so she would never do something like this again. I won't appear again. I swear on my integrity that I won't appear again. When they were outside, they had to fight against the elite special forces from 11 countries. They had to inform each other of their every move so that they could understand each other. If they suddenly acted alone, not only would they not be able to withstand all the dangers, it would also be counterproductive and give others an opportunity to take advantage of them. She would never make such a mistake again. At this point, Yi Qian finally understood Xia Jinyuan's intentions. He wanted to tell her that as long as she was with her comrades, she could solve any problem together and not face it alone. Acting on his own without any discussion was actually a sign that he did not trust his comrades. He could tell that she actually trusted him more. Even if she said that she trusted her comrades, he could tell from her small actions that she trusted him more. She would rather do it herself than let her comrades do it. Yi Qian was not afraid when faced with his gaze that could dissect a person's heart and see directly into the depths of her thoughts. Instead, she faced it calmly. I was like that in the past, but now, after nearly a month of training, I have changed. I believe that Captain Xia also saw the changes in me during the next few days of training. Chapter 28:43. She knew where she had gone wrong and knew how to correct it. Therefore, she constantly reminded herself to correct her mistakes in the later stages of her training. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan saw her hard work. Her clear black eyes were filled with unwavering determination. Xia Jinyuan admired her tenacity. A hint of a smile flashed across his eyes as he said gently, "Little fox, your individual combat ability is already very strong. Next, you need to slow down your pace and get used to our comrades. This time, the competition overseas will be a huge challenge for you. It's all about teamwork and teamwork. Devil and I have seen your changes in the later stages of your training, and we are very happy. Every change you make makes Devil, and I feel gratified." As he spoke, he suddenly blinked his eyes lightly. His posture suddenly became lazy, and he no longer looked as serious as before. Even his voice was full of laughter. Moreover, the military is also looking forward to your performance. Devil and I are also looking forward to your performance in this competition. You are the most important person in our entire team. Therefore, Little Fox, perform well. Important person? Perform well? Why did she feel that? There was a deeper meaning behind his words. All right, it's getting late. You can go rest now. Half of the 19-hour flight has already passed. Rest well for the remaining few hours and prepare yourself for the first competition tomorrow. Xia Jinyuan, who had been keeping track of the time, saw that the two of them had been talking alone for half an hour. He originally wanted to talk for another hour, but then he remembered that his brother-in-law was still in the first-class cabin. If he really talked for an hour, he would probably be targeted by his brother-in-law again. So, he decided to forget about it. After talking alone for half an hour, he even secretly kissed her. He was satisfied. After saying that, he stood up. Yi Jian was thinking about the deeper meaning of his words just now, but she couldn't figure it out after thinking for a while. When she came back to her senses, she saw that he was about to get up and leave. Yi Jian, who wanted to know what he meant, quickly reached out and grabbed his wrist. Xia Jinyuan was about to take a step forward when Yi Qian happened to pull him back. He wanted to leave, she wanted to pull him back. Thus, the female soldier Yi Qian valiantly pulled Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was almost 9 meters tall, down. Even though Lieutenant Colonel Xia was very skilled, he was still caught off guard by Yi Qian. He tripped and fell onto Yi Qian's lap. The air was eerily quiet, and there was a strong sense of awkwardness in the silence. Xia Jinyuan felt awkward for his girlfriend. The strength was strong enough to trip him. The whole process happened so fast that he didn't even have time to react before he fell into her arms. Yi Qian was so embarrassed that her vision started to blur. It was usually the man who pulled the woman to sit on his lap, but when it came to her, it was the other way around. Moreover, the guy sitting on her lap didn't get up immediately. Instead, he stretched out his long arm and hooked it around her neck. She was laughing so hard that her chest was shaking. "Don't laugh. Hurry up and get up." Yi Qian, who was blushing from his laughter, tried to pry his hand away from her neck. In the end, not only did she not manage to pry his hand away, he tightened his grip around her neck. "I don't think we ate spinach tonight. Why are you so strong?" Xia Jinyuan was laughing so hard that the corners of his mouth were deeply sunken. His eyes, which were very close to her, shone with an obscure light that seemed to be able to suck her in. Chapter 28:44. Even though he was sitting on her lap, in fact, the moment he sat down, he used his other hand to support himself on the armrest of the chair to shift his body weight away from her so that her legs wouldn't bear too much weight. Yi Qian was so embarrassed by her own strength that she didn't even notice that he wasn't actually sitting on her lap. She also saw his seductive eyes looking at her teasingly. Yi Qian's face was already burning red. "Isn't it normal to be strong? I only pulled lightly just now. You clearly lost your balance." He held her neck. Even though there was a layer of cloth between them, she could still feel his body temperature. It was very hot, and the skin on the back of her neck was burning. "It's not normal. I think you did it on purpose because you didn't want me to leave. Did you deliberately play hooligan with me?" He smiled slightly as he spoke. His handsome face was very close to Yi Qian. They were so close that their breaths were so close that they could smell each other's breath. Yi Qian was enraged by his words. "Why would I play hooligan with you? Don't talk nonsense. It was just a small matter. Why did you have to make it sound so ambiguous?" It was as if she really did it on purpose. The sound of footsteps came from behind them. The sudden close distance between them made Yi Qian's heart hang high. She instinctively wanted to distance herself. She wanted to avoid him, but Xia Jinyuan didn't give her a chance. "How was this not playing hooligan? I wanted to leave, but you didn't let me. You even pulled me onto your lap when I wasn't paying attention. If this isn't playing hooligan, then what is?" This was unintentional. It has nothing to do with playing hooligan. It sounded like they were heading straight for business class. However, he was still sitting on her lap and didn't move. Yi Qian's heart was about to jump out of her throat. Her face was red as she pushed his shoulder forcefully. "Someone's coming. It must be the flight attendants. Hurry up and get up. It won't be good if they see you. I didn't play hooligan with you. It was purely unintentional. Also, you're my boyfriend. If I really wanted to do anything to you, would I need to play hooligan?" Playing hooligan means when a stranger acts intimately with another stranger. Do I need to play hooligan in our relationship? I can even hug and hug you openly. Do I need to play hooligan? Yi Qian's back tensed up. This guy, how long is he going to sit there? "Hurry up, they're coming," she urged in a low voice. However, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was approaching her, was completely indolent. He didn't care about the approaching footsteps at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "That's true. With our relationship, there's really no need to play any hooligan. If there's anything you need, just say it. Now that you've explained it like that, why do I hear a whiff of complaint? Are you trying to say, I haven't hugged you recently? Or have I not hugged you? I clearly remember that a few days ago at the old mansion, I even hugged you and walked in circles a few times. Why do you still think it's not enough? Yi Qian didn't want to talk to him anymore. This man, he could turn black into white. He was so thick-skinned. How could she win an argument against him? The flight attendants outside had already walked to the closed curtain. Yi Qian, who was so nervous that her heart was about to jump out of her chest, gave up on explaining to him. Her legs moved subconsciously. Yi Qian realized something was wrong. Chapter 28:45. When she moved her legs again, she realized that he wasn't sitting on her lap at all. She didn't feel the weight of his body. Ask them if they need anything else. If not, turn off the lights and rest. A flight attendant's voice came from outside the curtain. It was the leader of the flight attendants. Another flight attendant replied softly, "Okay, I'll go ask." When Yi Qian heard this, she couldn't stay calm anymore. "Get up quickly. The flight attendant is really going to enter." Before the words could be uttered, the entire back of the seat leaned back. With the sound of the curtain being pulled, the back of the seat was completely lowered. From the flight attendant's position, she could only see the male soldier standing up. She couldn't see the female soldier lying down. Yi Qian, who was lying down, wanted to get up, but her legs were firmly clamped between his legs. She didn't dare to move for fear of being seen by the flight attendant. Xia Jinyuan stood up and politely said to the flight attendants, "Thank you for your hard work. We don't need anything else for the time being. We can turn off the lights at the time you said." The flight attendant opened the curtain and saw the male soldier standing in the first row of the business class. After all, she had received professional training, so she did not show a trace of surprise. Instead, she bowed slightly and politely said, "Good night," before leaving in her high heels. Yi Qian, who was lying in his seat, heard the sound of the curtain being pulled back. His heart, which was about to jump out of his throat, finally returned to normal. Now that he had nothing to worry about, Yi Qian forcefully pulled her legs out and bent her knees to hit his legs. She was quite agile, but when she sat down earlier, she still hadn't unbuckled her seatbelt. She relied on her legs to move, so she was no match for Xia Jinyuan. Not only did she fail to teach him a lesson, but she was also pressed down by him. It doesn't matter if you're trying to be a hooligan or not. Your actions have successfully aroused my interest, so we can't give up halfway. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body bent down. This time, he didn't use his entire body weight. Instead, he placed all his weight on top of her. What was supposed to be a conversation ended up being a kiss between the two of them. By the time they returned to the first-class cabin, Yi Qian felt that his mouth was a little red and swollen. Was this guy a dog? Nibbling and biting, and even saying that he was already restraining himself. Rest early. Good night. Xia Jinyuan walked past her. His soft voice brushed past her ear. Yi Qian only had time to glare at him before the satisfied Lieutenant Colonel Xia walked past Yi Qian and returned to his seat. Li Jinyan was still awake. He heard the commotion beside him and asked the guy sitting diagonally across the aisle, "You've been chatting alone for 40 minutes. Were you really just chatting with my sister?" Xia Jinyuan, who was lying down in his clothes, had already closed his eyes. He smiled and said, "We chatted for the first 30 minutes. You know that she's used to fighting alone. I need to understand the situation before the battle. As for the last 10 minutes or so, it's not something I can talk about." He couldn't say that he was actually a little nervous. After all, it was his first time participating in such a large-scale competition. Indescribable meant that it was inconvenient to say it out loud. Li Jinyan instantly understood what it meant. The veins on his forehead were bulging as he said coldly, "We're on a plane, and it's before the battle. Do you have to be so beastly?" "I'm not beastly. I just couldn't help myself. Don't worry, brother-in-law. There will be more in the future." Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was both physically and mentally relaxed, accepted his brother-in-law's accusations with a smile and gave him a heads up. Chapter 28:46. After that, Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but smile. "Bear with it. You'll get used to it. Once you get used to it, you'll accept it." Faced with Xia Jinyuan's hooligan behavior, Li Jinyan's veins popped out several times before he managed to restrain himself from standing up to teach him a lesson. 40 minutes. Anything that could be done could be done. His little sister had already been bullied countless times by him. Knowing when to stop, Lieutenant Colonel Xia didn't provoke his brother-in-law any further. This had to be done step by step. If he was too hasty, his brother-in-law would be disgusted. If he was too slow, his brother-in-law would be dragged down. Therefore, the best way was to let his brother-in-law get used to it. He had to let his little sister have another man by her side. And this man's existence was an important position that even her older brother couldn't replace. One day, the older brother who acted as his little sister's protector would have to let go. He would have to personally hand over his little sister to another man who was about to spend the rest of his life with her. As the older brother, the devil had to get used to it. From getting used to it, to accepting it, and then to being natural. When that time came, he would think that any intimate actions between him and Yi Qian were normal. It wouldn't be like now. As long as he made the slightest movement, the older brother would panic. He couldn't wait to keep little Fox under his watch 24/7 so that he wouldn't take advantage of her. The sound of cracking knuckles could be heard in the quiet space. It was crisp and sounded like some kind of warning. It was the sound of the devil rubbing his fists. At this time, at least 3 minutes had passed since Xia Jinyuan finished speaking. The Demon King, who was rubbing his fists, said coldly, "Don't go too far, Q King. I can tell you very seriously that if my uncle finds out about your actions, you won't have an easy time." At this moment, Xia Jinyuan had to admit that he was really intimidated. After the devil was done being silent, it was his turn to be silent. After a while, Xia Jinyuan said helplessly, "I already feel that my life won't be easy. Yi Qian told me that Old Master said that it wouldn't be too late for her to get married until she was 28 or 29. She's only 20 now, which means that I still have to wait for another 8 to 9 years. Devil, we're comrades, right? Can you bear to see your comrade endure for another 8 to 9 years? You can train harder every day until you have no more distracting thoughts. Train until you have no energy to think about other things." As a man, the Demon King immediately understood the meaning behind Xia Jinyuan's words. His lips were slightly sunken, and there was a faint smile on his exceptionally cold face. It was like a spring breeze, and the fragrance of flowers was pleasant. If I can get through the first 10 years, the next 8 or 9 years will be nothing. Use your tenacious willpower and wait until the two of you get married. My uncle has no intention of having a grandchild so soon. Even if you can't bear it, you have to wait." Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan suddenly figured out another meaning. In the blink of an eye, his handsome face, which had only been a little helpless, suddenly darkened. "I want to know, what do you think Yi Jian and I did in such a short period of 40 minutes? He gritted his teeth as he said the last few words. After he finished asking, Li Jinyan reacted. He had used such a vengeful tone. How could he not know why Li Jinyan's face had darkened? At the same time, he also realized that he was overthinking things. But could he blame him? No. He had also grown up in the capital and had heard a little about Xia Jinyuan, so it was normal for him to misunderstand. Chapter 28:47. Now that he was angry, Li Jinyan, who was protective of his sister, instantly felt relieved. He raised his eyebrows and pretended not to hear anything. He said calmly, "Do you need me to point out what you've done? 40 minutes. Another 10 minutes or so, and it'll be an hour. You can finish whatever you want to do." He could finish that kind of thing in just 40 minutes? Xia Jinyan was doubting his ability. It was unbearable. Xia Jinyuan, whose ability as a man had been doubted, took a deep breath. He had had a good talk with his brother-in-law, who made him so angry. Otherwise, his reputation would be ruined. When a man's ability was doubted by another man, it hurt his self-esteem even more than being doubted by a woman. As a virgin, Lieutenant Colonel Xia had always been full of confidence in his ability. Finish something in 40 minutes? How is that possible? It had to be at least 5 times faster. Wasn't 5 times a little too much? For time should be about right. At least it was 160 minutes. In the beginning, they were intimate and in and out in the end. 160 minutes should be enough, right? Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was already calculating his approximate time, smiled and elegantly retorted, "You only need 40 minutes to finish a man's task, but I can't do that. I need at least 2 hours to finish everything I want to do. 40 minutes from beginning to end? Devil, is this the average time you've gotten from your daily practice? Or the highest? It should be the highest, right?" He dragged out the last sentence a little. There was an indescribable sense of pity and euphemism in his tone. "Don't worry, you're my brother-in-law after all. I won't tell anyone about you. But it's better if you don't say anything about this in the future. Stop it with me and don't tell anyone else in the future. Being intimate in and out, no matter how I calculate, it's still not enough time. Devil, you should practice a little more. You should be able to do it after a few more times." His voice was very soft, but there was only so much space in the room, and the two of them were separated by an aisle. No matter how soft it was, they had to be able to hear each other. Naturally, the comrades who were sleeping in front of him also heard it. The T6 combatant, who had not fallen asleep, was confused when he heard this. In the end, his curiosity got the better of him. He sat up with the thin blanket on him and asked Xia Jinyuan, who was in front of him, "I can understand the kissing in the beginning, but can you explain the in and out in the end? I don't understand." Cough, 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 cough. After he finished asking, he saw his two comrades sleeping in front of him start coughing violently. Meanwhile, G3, who was sleeping next to him, was even more agile. From the moment he got up to the moment he dashed across the aisle and covered T6's mouth, the entire process took less than 10 seconds. His movements were so fast that it was like the great universal shift in wuxia novels. The T6 combatant, whose mouth was suddenly covered, was still trying to struggle. He heard G3 warn him, "Not only did you eavesdrop, but you even dared to ask about it. We're all listening. How can we continue listening if you ask us that?" That way, they wouldn't be able to hear any more inside stories. Yi Qian, who was sleeping at the back, did not hear what his brother was talking about with her boyfriend. But when the T6 combatant asked about getting in and out of the room, Yi Qian realized he had been killed. Understood. Yes. The result was she could vaguely guess what the two men who occupied important positions in her life were talking about. They were talking about some topics that were not suitable for children. On the plane with their comrades around them, the two of them were actually talking about topics that were not suitable for children. When did their relationship become so good? So good that they could even talk about such personal topics. Chapter 28:48. At this moment, Yi Qian, who instantly understood what he meant, did not know she was also part of this conversation and was even the center of it. The T6 combatant in front of him, whose mouth was covered, did not struggle anymore. He quickly nodded to indicate that he understood and asked his comrade to quickly let go. He was almost suffocating from having his mouth and nose covered. "Why are you nodding? You've already alerted the enemy." When he let go, G3 even tried his best to cover his mouth and stop his comrade from listening to the inside story. He was really not afraid of a godlike opponent, but a pig-like comrade. "Hurry up and find me a girlfriend. You're always acting like a hothead. Didn't you say you had a college student you liked? After this mission is over, go get her for me." Once he got her, he would know what it meant to be all lovey-dovey in the early stages and going in and out in the later stages. After letting go, G3 knocked the back of T6's head with his hand before returning to his seat. He said to the two kings in the front row who had fallen silent, "He's still a child, so he's making a fuss over nothing. Ignore him. When he grows up, he'll understand what it means." In any case, to him, he understood. He also realized that when two completely unrelated words were combined into one sentence, the meaning behind it was really straightforward. The T6 combatant, who had never even touched a girl's hand before, was blushing from being covered. He took a few deep breaths of air, but before he could lie down, Xia Jinyuan, who had not moved, got up and turned his head to look at him calmly. Then he looked at G3, who was lying down and pretending to be asleep. "It looks like you've all understood. Was it fun eavesdropping?" G3 decided that he did not hear anything and remained still. Meanwhile, the two comrades at the front who were coughing so hard a few seconds ago also quieted down and remained still. They could not help it. They could already feel the cold aura emanating from the two people behind them. Eavesdropping was a very immoral thing to do. They did not eavesdrop. They just accidentally overheard it. The two Storm Commandos' comrades in front of them were whispering sweet nothings and going in and out of the room. Ahem! They immediately understood what it meant. It was good enough that they knew what it meant. But a hothead who did not understand the deeper meaning of it just had to appear behind them and ask about it. They really wanted to give him a good beating. "Let's have a good chat when we get back," Li Jinyan said lightly. The two water demons of the Storm Commandos who were pretending to be asleep shuddered violently. They pinched the thin blanket with 2 fingers and slowly pulled it up until it covered their entire heads. They didn't hear anything. At this moment, Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan no longer discussed a matter of 40 minutes. Xia Jinyuan was fine. At least he had fought back. Although he had been eavesdropped, he was still in a good mood. Li Jinyan, on the other hand, was a little unhappy. He said that his maximum was only 40 minutes, whispering sweet nothings to each other, going in and out. He hadn't even tried it before. So where did the maximum 40 minutes come from? It wouldn't be good if he continued with the topic. This group of fellows who were pretending to be asleep would eavesdrop again. But if he didn't say anything, he would feel aggrieved. "I'll tell you when I have a maximum and minimum time. So far, I haven't tried it, so I can't answer your question." This was Li Jinyan's counterattack. The comrades who were pretending to be asleep but had their ears pricked up to eavesdrop instantly understood. TSK, TSK, TSK. They heard another big secret. It turned out that the Demon King was just like Q King, still a child. How pitiful. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting, rubbed his forehead. Same here. Sleep, sleep. They hadn't even tried it, so what was there to discuss? Chapter 28:49. If he continued, it would be a bit embarrassing. Colonel Xia refused to continue embarrassing himself, so he didn't say anything else. Demon King Li, on the other hand, didn't think it was anything to be embarrassed about. If he had never had a woman, then so be it. What was there to be embarrassed about? However, there was no need to say anything more. It was already late, and it was time to sleep. The Demon King didn't say anything else. He closed his eyes and soon fell asleep. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was having a bizarre dream. It was as if a hole had been torn in space and time, and a huge space-time storm had sucked her into the hole. No matter how she struggled, it was futile. She can't stay here any longer. If she does, her identity will be discovered sooner or later. We must find a way to get rid of her as soon as possible. We can't let anyone find out. You're crazy. If we get rid of her now, isn't that the same as telling everyone that I'm very afraid of my cousin? She's already become like that. So what if she has an identity? Right now, I'm the winner. As long as she exists, you'll never be the winner. The dust hasn't settled yet. Can you, the winner, really sit back and relax? Wake up. You've spent so much effort to obtain a good life, and it's all because of her. As long as she doesn't fall, you, the winner, will have a tiger by your side. If you don't get rid of her, there will be no end to your troubles. You said she's a tiger? Huh. She's never been impressive in front of me. Even if she's a tiger, I've broken her limbs, pulled out her teeth, and done whatever I want to her. Right now, I don't want to get rid of her immediately. I want to see her suffer all kinds of torture. I want to see her live at the lowest level and bitterly struggle. The gloomy woman's voice was so familiar. Even though it came out intermittently through the closed door, she could still hear it clearly from outside the door. The woman who spoke was none other than Ying, who had just returned from studying abroad. The man's voice sounded a little older. His voice was very steady, but it was also filled with the cruelty of the world. Every word he said was filled with ruthlessness, letting people know that the middle-aged man speaking inside was a ruthless character. Only you would treat her like a sick cat. Even your father, Yi Jifan, wouldn't dare. How could you be so bold as to think that even if you don't get rid of her, you can still suppress her death? Don't be so confident. Overconfidence is conceit. Be careful not to get into trouble. Don't worry, I'll never let her stir up trouble. How I made her obedient in the past. I'll do the same in the future. If she dares to go against me, there will be no place for her in this world. Really? Then I'm really looking forward to it. The middle-aged man's voice was like a slithering, venomous snake, emitting a cold aura. His slightly raised laughter was like a deadly poison, making it difficult to breathe even after hearing it. When Yiqian opened her eyes, it was still dark outside. She looked at the time. It was 4 in the morning, about an hour before the plane landed. She had a dream the entire night. It wasn't an illusory dream that appeared in her dream. It was less than 3 days after she was taken in by Yi Ying, when she woke up in the middle of the night and accidentally heard a conversation coming from her study. It was at that time that she realized that Yi Ying didn't really want to help her. She only wanted to bully her like before, and even worse. It was also at that time that she completely understood Yi Ying's viciousness. She was so scared that she left Yi Ying's apartment like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Not long after, Yi Ying married into a rich family, and her real suffering officially began. Chapter 2850. In this past, ever since she was reborn, she had never thought about it. But for some reason, she dreamed of it tonight. She dreamt that Yi Ying was talking to a complete stranger. She dreamt of what they had said. At this time, Yi Qian was no longer sleepy. Since there was only an hour left before the plane landed, Yi Qian got up and walked softly to the business class cabin. As soon as she moved, Xia Jinyuan, who was sleeping in front of her, opened his eyes as if he had sensed her movement. He got up on one knee and turned his head to look behind him. He saw that Yi Qian had already walked past the first-class cabin and was about to open the door and enter the business-class cabin. Xia Jinyuan immediately woke up. He raised his wrist to check the time and gently pulled the thin blanket off his body. He got up and walked towards Yi Qian. As soon as he moved, Li Jinyan also opened his eyes. When he got up, Xia Jinyuan happened to pass by him. Seeing that he had woken up, he said softly, "Yi Qian, wake up. Something's not right." Hearing that something was wrong with his sister, Li Jinyan got up along with the blanket. The moment the blanket fell, he grabbed it and threw it back into his seat. Yi Qian had already walked out of the first-class cabin. She was thinking about something and didn't notice that there were 2 people behind her. Yi Qian, who had taken off her combat suit jacket, was only wearing a short-sleeved fitness shirt. She sat quietly by the window and looked through the cabin window towards the horizon. The air conditioning on the plane was very strong. After sitting down, Yi Qian realized that she was sweating all over. There was sweat on her forehead and back, and it was sticky and uncomfortable. She wiped the sweat on her forehead with the back of her hand and fanned herself with the hem of her clothes. The cold air passed through the hem of her clothes, bringing a hint of freshness to her body that was originally sticky with sweat. She didn't know that a dream, a piece of the past, was enough to make her sweat so much. At that time, she had found Yi Jifan, who had just returned to the country. When she saw that Yi Ying was willing to take her in, she was even willing to help her get the household register from Yi Jifan so that she could get an identity card as soon as possible. She had been forced into a corner by Yi Jifan. Just when she was feeling hopeless, Yi Ying's agreement had undoubtedly given her hope. She was filled with joy, thinking that Yi Ying was sincerely helping her. She waited happily. Who would have thought that she would end up with such a result that would only cause her to fall into an even deeper abyss? When she heard this conversation, she was so scared that she bit the tip of her tongue so hard that it bled. Only then did she stop herself from screaming and her trembling legs from collapsing. With a mouth full of blood, she didn't even have time to pack her clothes and left in such a sorry state. After experiencing so many things later on, this memory had become insignificant and was directly forgotten in the corner of his memory. But tonight, for some reason, he actually dreamed of it. He even broke out in a cold sweat. Could it be that, as Captain Xia had said, he was really a little nervous since it was his first time representing the country, and his mental state was too tense? But being too tense and dreaming of a past event that he had forgotten had nothing to do with it. The cabin door that had just been closed opened. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the front row of the business class, looked up and saw her brother and boyfriend walking over one after the other. "Can't sleep?" Li Jinyan, who came out first, asked first. There was a hint of faint worry in his voice. Chapter 28:51. Yi Qian hurriedly got up and glanced at Xia Jinyuan, who came out after him. She raised her hand to wipe away her sweat and smiled. "Yeah, I had an uncomfortable dream, so I can't sleep anymore. It's getting late, so I decided to get up and walk around." She originally wanted to say, "I just woke up," to cover up the uncomfortable dream, but she remembered that Captain Xia once told her that her family was eager to understand her and wanted to know everything about her. They also hoped that she would tell them everything. So she swallowed the words that rushed to her mouth and took the initiative to tell her brother why she couldn't fall asleep. Li Jinyan, who had no change in his expression, sat down beside Yi Qian and openly squeezed Xia Jinyuan to the seat across the aisle. He looked the same as usual, but only he knew that when he heard Yi Qian tell him why she couldn't fall asleep, all 10 of his fingers trembled slightly. He sat down, steadied his voice, and said in a deep voice, "What dream? Can you tell your brother? I dreamt that someone colluded with Sun Ying to harm me. It was too real, so I woke up at the start. My back was covered in cold sweat." Yi Qian couldn't tell him about her dream of her previous life. She had mentioned it once, but Captain Xia didn't believe her, so she didn't want to mention it again. But now, it seemed like there was no need to mention it again. Yi Ying had become Sun Ying, Yi Zhifan and Sun Dongqing had divorced, and they were both jailed. The family that harmed her the most in her previous life had received their retribution. Mentioning Yi Zhifan's family in her previous life didn't seem like it was necessary. Li Jinyan's heart suddenly froze. His thin lips were pressed tightly together as he held her left hand that was placed on the armrest. He said calmly, "Don't think too much. It's just a dream. Even if it feels real, it's still just a dream. They will never harm you, never." His sister had finally returned to the Fu family and reunited with her family. How could he allow anyone to harm her? He would never allow it. Yi Qian smiled and said, "Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't take it to heart. I just felt a little depressed. Brother, don't worry. I'll be fine after a while." After a slight pause, Yi Qian continued, "Maybe it's because Sun Ying has done too many terrible things to me in the past. Now that it's before the competition, I'm feeling a little pressured. That's why I'm dreaming of all this nonsense." At this point, Yi Qian saw a flicker of light in her brother's cold and calm eyes, and the right hand holding her left hand was trembling slightly. In that instant, she understood. Her brother's emotions were fluctuating because of her mentioning the past. Just as Captain Xia said, she didn't need to talk more about the past. Li Jinyan's emotions were indeed fluctuating. Ever since his sister came home, she had never taken the initiative to talk about her difficulties, whether it was to him or his uncle. Grandpa didn't even need to be mentioned. She had always only told him the good news and not the bad news. He even said that although her life in the Yi family was tough when she was young, she could still make do with it. How could that kind of life be lived just by putting up with it? After investigating, he found out how tough and difficult his sister's life had been. She had even almost died a few times. The Fu family owed her. He didn't dare to mention his sister's past to his grandfather. He didn't even dare to mention it to his uncle. He didn't dare to ask her personally for fear that he would hear her complaining about the Fu family. Chapter 28:52. Just like that, he was so careful, afraid that his sister, who had finally returned home after so much difficulty, would have a crack in their newly established relationship because of the past. If she didn't mention it, he didn't dare to say a word, afraid that he would trigger a minefield and end up hurting both sides. "Brother, my conflict with Yi Zhifan's family is already a thing of the past. Now that they've gotten what they deserved, I have nothing to resent or hate. It's not worth it to put too much thought into people like them. Although I don't talk about the past, I really feel that it's all in the past. There's not much value in bringing up the past, and it'll only make you sad for no reason. The dreams I've had up until now, just like what you said just now, no matter how real they are, they're still just dreams. They can't come true, and they can't threaten me. Yi Qian said magnanimously, without a trace of gloominess between his brows. Even the emotions that were disturbed by the dream just now gradually faded away, and he no longer thought about it. Speaking of which, this was a good thing. If one day she could once again hear the voice of the man who plotted with Yi Ying in the study in her past life, she would definitely recognize him. This way, she could use this person as a lead to investigate why this person wanted Yi Ying to get rid of her in her past life. In her past life, Yi Ying married into a prestigious family so quickly and was able to gain a foothold so quickly and was so aggressive towards her. Who was the person who helped her? Could it be the person who plotted with her in the study? Yi Qian couldn't help but frown slightly. Li Jinyan, who saw this, lowered his voice, and there was a hint of gentleness in his cold and stern voice. The past is the past, and the people in the past are also the past. Leave everything in the future to me. As your brother, it's time for me to protect my sister. I'm also very willing to listen to your worries and very willing to help you solve the problems in life. Sister, remember, you have your brother, and your brother is very willing to hold up the sky for you. Hearing this, Yi Qian's heart softened. This was the benefit of having a brother. It made her feel at ease. Nodding heavily, Yi Qian smiled. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting on one side of the aisle, saw her open her heart and confide in Li Jinyan. A deep smile appeared on his handsome face. This was very good. Family ties also needed to be stable, and the best way to do so was through communication. His little fox had wandered around for a long time and finally had a home. He sincerely hoped that she could be happy in this home. Time passed quietly, and the sweet voice of the flight attendant came from the radio, telling the special passengers that the plane would arrive at the destination in half an hour. The three of them immediately returned to the first-class cabin. The other 5 comrades had already woken up. They dressed and washed up as quickly as possible. Half an hour later, the plane landed safely. The special forces from the mysterious eastern country were neatly dressed. They walked out of the cabin with steady steps and a fierce aura. No one came out to greet them, and no one told them what means of transportation to take to their next destination. From the moment the special forces got off the plane, they had already entered this death race without death. Xia Jinyuan and his team of 8 were the same as all the other special forces from other countries. When they arrived, they found out that the race had started from the moment they got off the plane. It was to see who could reach the eastern primeval forest in the shortest time. The only thing they were provided was one thing: a map. Chapter 2853. The map was their only tool to reach the eastern primeval forest. Other than that, they did not have any other auxiliary tools. They would have to figure out how to reach the eastern primeval forest on their own. China had sent a total of 8 special forces soldiers this time. The Snowfield Brigade consisted of Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian, G3, T6, and Sparrow Hawk, while the Storm Commandos consisted of Li Jinyan, Big Eel, and Big Shark. The 8 of them looked at the only map they had. They had just gotten off the plane, but their expressions were already very gloomy. Do you guys think this is a show of strength? The T6 combatant looked at the only map in his captain's hands with a gloomy look in his eyes. Even the map isn't waterproof. The eastern primeval forest is rainy and cold, surrounded by lakes and wetlands. Even the map isn't waterproof. This show of strength is really ruthless. His words made his comrades look at him. Then their gazes landed on Xia Jinyuan. He was the commander of this mission, so they wanted to see what he had to say. Xia Jinyuan handed the map to Yi Qian first. Qin Niao, use your strengths and memorize the entire map. Remember the coordinates we used to enter the primeval forest so that you can accurately report our location. Other than Yi Qian, even Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan could not surpass her in terms of memory. As such, it was best to arrange for Yi Qian to memorize the map. Big Shark and Big Eel from the Storm Commandos did not know about Yi Qian's powerful memory. When they heard that, the 2 of them looked at each other in disbelief. Big Shark asked uncertainly, "Memorize the map? Will it work?" It was a 4-page map with the topography of the entire eastern primeval forest on it. Could it be memorized? He could still believe it if it was only a few kilometers away, but they had to memorize the entire map of the eastern primeval forest. Was that even possible? No matter how he thought about it, it did not seem possible. Li Jinyan knew that his sister had a very good memory. Just like his grandfather also had a very good memory. Even though he was already in his 80s, his memory was still quite good. Although he knew about it, he had never seen it before. When he heard that, he became very interested. He also wanted to know if his sister could remember it. But Li Jinyan glanced at Xia Jinyuan and saw that his eyes were indifferent, and he was very relaxed when he gave his instructions. This kind of relaxation came from his trust in his sister. In other words, he believed that his sister could memorize this map in a short time. The T6 combatant immediately laughed. He happened to be standing next to Yi Qian, so he nudged Yi Qian lightly with his shoulder and said with a smile, "If you want to stump us, that'll be difficult. With our blue bird around, its photographic memory isn't just for show. It's a real ability." As he spoke, he even gave Yi Qian a thumbs up. Yi Qian, who had his head lowered to memorize the map, did not notice that the terrain of the forest in the northeast of Egonia was complex. The forest was boundless, and deep within the forest were many lakes, wetlands, and abundant rainwater. Sometimes, even with a compass, one might not be able to walk out of such a place. Xia Jinyuan glanced at T6 with a cold look in his eyes. "I'm sorry." The T6 combatant instantly understood that Yi Qian was memorizing the map. He should not have interrupted her and distracted her. He hurriedly took a few steps back to avoid interrupting Yi Qian. Principal Chun had systematically taught Yi Qian how to memorize maps. Yi Qian could memorize any type of map very quickly, even if it was just a small place name. Therefore, memorizing a map was a very, very small task for Yi Qian. Chapter 2854. The maps distributed to the special forces of each country were military maps. The terrain, landforms, and topography were very clear and accurate. As long as Yi Qian memorized it, it would play a key role in the upcoming competition. Yi Qian didn't make his comrades wait for too long. After 15 minutes, he returned the map to Xia Jinyuan with a smile in his clear eyes. "Okay, I've memorized it all. The map can be invalidated." "You memorized it all?" The big mermaid was astonished. "Your memory is too good. Can I give you a test? Isn't this too amazing? You actually used only 15 minutes to memorize a 4-page military map? Can I test you?" Xia Jinyuan stuffed the map into his hands. "Go ahead." Then he said to Yi Qian, "If the map isn't destroyed, it's not waterproof. There are many lakes and wetlands in the forest, and maps are very important combat tools. Once the special forces of other countries lose their maps, it's very likely that they will target the maps in the hands of other countries' special forces. Let's keep this first. If there really is a situation like snatching the map, we can use this map as a tool to confuse other special forces." As a combat commander, he couldn't just look at what was in front of him. He had to look at the overall situation. His comrades all understood what he meant and nodded gently in agreement. Big Eel immediately started to test him. 3 minutes later, Big Eel handed the map back to Xia Jinyuan. He was impressed by Yi Qian's memory. It was too scary, too scary. How could such a memory be human? It was like a supercomputer. It was too scary. Big Shark secretly swallowed countless times. What a terrifying memory. She memorized a 4-page map in 15 minutes. Was there a computer in Qing Yao's brain? Otherwise, how could she have memorized it? After the map issue was resolved, Xia Jinyuan put away the only map that would allow them to walk out of the eastern forest and find the various competition locations. Jun Yin said coldly, "IKA Assault is a long-range reconnaissance battle. It's also known as the competition without death. If it's not ruthless enough, how could it be known worldwide for its ferocity? The only map is not a show of strength. It tells us from the beginning that this is a competition that we have to take seriously and give it our all. Be alert. From this moment on, we have started the competition." As he spoke, he looked coldly at Yi Qian and asked her, "How many kilometers is it from our current location to the forest in eastern Estonia?" Yi Qian replied, "The distance from here to the destination is 371 kilometers. If we want to reach the destination, it's impossible for us to reach it by any other means except for a helicopter. In other words, if we want to reach the destination, we have to get a..." As she spoke, Yi Qian looked ahead. To be precise, she looked at a group of special forces who were wearing jungle combat uniforms and were sent to compete for the border of our country. She didn't stop talking, but she slowed down a lot. "A helicopter will do. Only a helicopter can reach the destination." After saying this, she raised her chin slightly. "Our imaginary enemy is here. It looks like they're looking for something. Now that they've seen us, their aura has changed greatly. They're full of murderous intent." Chapter 2855. Yi Qian's eyes met with the commander from the border country walking in front of him. His low voice calmly traveled into the ears of his comrades. "The border country soldier walking in front of us should be the commander. His eyes are fierce, and he seems to have a lot of opinions about us. It seems like our previous guess was correct. They really might be trying to mess with us." The 7 people who originally had their backs facing the border country soldier all turn around. The SFS Special Border Defense Army from the border country had already seen the Chinese Special Forces. The commander in the lead didn't slow down. He maintained the same pace and strode towards the Chinese soldiers. The commander of the SFS Special Border Defense Army was a soldier who was proficient in Chinese. As he walked over, his eyes swept across the faces of the Chinese soldiers one by one. In the end, his eyes landed on Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan. He couldn't tell which of the two was the commander of the Chinese soldiers. From their eyes, he saw the same confidence, the same coldness, and the same arrogance. There is a word in Chinese that was very suitable to describe the look in their eyes: disdain. The disdain and coldness in their eyes made people feel at first glance that they weren't simple people. A group of Chinese soldiers that weren't simple. There was even a Chinese Special Forces mixed in with a female soldier. Ha ha ha. Were they really not simple? Ha ha. For those small countries, the Chinese soldiers in front of him were indeed not simple. But in front of the SFS Special Border Defense Army, they were just SOSO. The SFS Special Border Defense Army was a guerrilla force formed by the elite ethnic minorities under the command of the cabinet minister of the border country. They were then used as the foundation to form the border country's Special Border Defense Army. When it was formed, this Border Defense Army was meant to be able to carry out secret operations behind enemy countries in future wars. A special force formed with this purpose was indeed extraordinary. It was normal for the commander from the SFS Special Border Defense Army to have this sense of superiority. When he walked in front of the Chinese soldiers, he finally stopped sizing them up. Unable to confirm which one was the commander, he reached out his hand and took the initiative to politely greet them in Chinese. "Nice to meet you. I'm the captain of our country's competition, Shahrukh Zhou." As long as one of them reached out to shake his hand, that person would definitely be the commander of the Chinese Special Forces. Xia Jinyuan extended his hand and shook hands with the commander of the border country, who had deep facial features, especially the contours of his eyes. His gaze was like that of a vulture hovering in the sky, waiting for its prey to strike. "Nice to meet you. I'm the captain of our country's competition this time. You can call me Xia." As soon as Shahrukh opened his mouth, the Chinese soldiers felt a chill in their hearts. He was actually a guy who knew Chinese. Under normal circumstances, if an important soldier from another country could speak the language of another country, it could be seen that this person had a deep understanding of the other country. Learning a language was to improve one's understanding of the country. A heavyweight soldier who was proficient in another country's language also wanted to understand the country, and even more. Shahrukh held Xia Jinyuan's hand. The smile on his face was deep, but the smile in his eyes was slightly cold. His skin was dark, typical of a border country. He withdrew his hand and maintained a polite greeting. You must have just gotten off the plane. We just circled around here and didn't see you. Chapter 2856. The probing from the border country began from Shiruka's first sentence. He wanted to know if the Chinese soldier had just gotten off the plane, or if he had already gone around in circles like them. Yes, he got off the plane about 20 minutes ago and is now heading to the eastern primeval forest. Since the other side intended to communicate in Chinese to show their friendliness, Xia Jinyuan communicated with the other side in proper Chinese. Shiruka's eyes flashed slightly. He raised his hand and pinched the bridge of his eyebrows helplessly, as if he had encountered a difficult problem. Our destination is the same, but we don't have any means of transportation. We're looking for a means of transportation that can leave, such as a helicopter. Unfortunately, we have looked around and did not find a helicopter at this airport. Xia, we should be trapped here. If we look for a helicopter again, the delay will only be longer. Let's consider driving away. Just now, the distance is about 300 kilometers. We can increase the speed to about 140 kilometers per hour. In this way, we can reach our destination in about 2 hours. Are you interested in traveling together? We could travel together and discuss what the next competition will be. If I remember correctly, this is the first time your side is participating in the IKA Assault competition, and we have participated in it 4 times. We can share our experience with you. Before they arrived at their destination, the competition had already begun. Xia Jinyuan had always been able to tolerate verbal provocation. Even if he was angry, he would not show it on his face. He would only use this method to fight back. The commander of the border country, who was a little shorter than him, smiled and said, "The competition has already begun from the moment we got off the plane. We'd better act separately. It would be bad if we were dragged down." What he said was that it would be bad if they were dragged down. However, when Shiruk heard it, it meant the opposite. It would be bad if they were dragged down by the Chinese side. For the border country, they had always claimed to be one of the 3 major military powers. It was normal for Shiruk to misunderstand the deeper meaning of Xia Jinyuan's words. The idea of a strong country had always been the strategic guidance since the founding of the border countries. Their ambitious ambitions were fully displayed in the foreign policy of the founding prime minister of the border countries. They did not want to be a supporting role. They wanted to be the protagonist, even if it was a competition. After Shaluk misunderstood, he made a prompt decision and immediately stopped suggesting that they travel together to test the strength of the Chinese soldiers. However, he would not express his new thoughts very obviously. After thinking for a while, he nodded and replied, "The competition has already started since we got off the plane, but we still don't know the rules of the competition so far. For the sake of caution, it is indeed better to act separately." Xia, thank you for your reminder. Otherwise, I would have led my comrades to make mistakes from the start. In that case, I can only say goodbye to you. Shaluk left with regret. His face was still full of smiles, but when he turned around, his expression became very cold. Before the border guards left, they all glanced at the faces of the Chinese soldiers. Every time they saw Yi Qian, their eyes would flash with the same smile. It was not a kind smile, but a smile of amusement. Such a smile filled the hearts of every Chinese soldier with coldness. Chapter 2857. However, this kind of smile was already considered very polite. At the very least, during the 1999 military parade, the self-developed weapons displayed by our country shocked the entire world. This caused many countries to put away their contempt and began to size up our country with a scrutinizing gaze. However, to the border countries, China's military strength was far inferior to theirs, and so was the strength of their troops. If it was in the past, they would not just chuckle, but mock them right to their faces. Now, they were already being polite. As the border countries of the 4 universal civilizations, ancient countries, they were a competitive country. The idea of either explode in competition or perish in competition had always been passed down by the leaders of the border countries. They had always wanted to be a strong country, a country that would make all the other big countries bow down to them. While they had been advancing towards this goal, They had also felt the strength of the Chinese side, which made them feel uneasy. Otherwise, there would not have been a case of a reconnaissance aircraft entering China's air defense territory and escaping back to their border. Now, before they had even reached their destination, they had already met the special forces from the Chinese side. The old and new debts were still fresh in their minds, and the SFS border guards were actually having a hard time holding it in. They even have a female soldier. I'm shocked. The Chinese side actually sent out a female soldier. Could it be that they can't find another powerful male soldier? I think they probably don't. Such a big country doesn't even have a single aircraft carrier at sea, and our country's aircraft carrier is already at sea. Without a powerful soldier, there won't be a strong country. A country that doesn't even have an aircraft carrier, what kind of powerful soldier can they have? Well said, I like it a lot. A Chinese country that even sent out a female soldier. How pitiful. Hopefully, they won't lose too badly. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back my laughter. I can't hold it in anymore. In the following competition, I think I'll laugh out loud every day. When I see their side appear, I'll try my best to hold it in and take the initiative to comfort them. Tell them not to take it to heart. After all, it's just a competition. It's not a big deal. The SFS border guards, who had walked a few meters away, no longer hid their hostility toward the Chinese special forces. Mocking laughter came out from everyone's mouth, with contempt and sharp hostility. Just wait. When we reach the eastern forest, we'll have many opportunities. Shah Rukh lowered his voice and said with a ferocious look in his eyes, I'll make them understand that they'd better stay in their own countries during any international competition. Otherwise, they'll lose miserably. Of course, we will tell them that they are not qualified to participate in such a competition. I'm sure we're not the only ones who think so. There are other countries who think so too, right? 12 countries if 6 countries think that they are not qualified to participate. I think this will be the most interesting thing in the IKA assault competition. The soldiers from the border countries had already left, and the mockery they left behind made Yi Qian and the others clench their fists. They didn't bother to hide their mockery. They didn't say anything, but their eyes clearly said that the special forces from the Chinese side were just SOSO and didn't need to be taken seriously. No soldier could tolerate such contempt, including Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan. They couldn't tolerate it. Chapter 28:58. Xia Jinyuan slightly squinted his unfathomable black eyes. He turned around and said to his comrades, just now, their eyes were asking for a beating. Since the imaginary enemy has become a reality, we don't have to be polite. Just do what you have to do. Seize the opportunity to teach them a lesson and teach them how to behave. Modesty is the foundation of life. They seem to have forgotten. If we have the chance, we don't mind teaching them a lesson. Tolerance was not Xia Jinyuan's style. He could tolerate like a normal person. He would judge the situation, wait for the right opportunity, and then deliver a fatal blow. His forbearance was to deliver a fatal blow to the enemy. He would continue to endure until the most suitable opportunity arrived. This kind of man was truly terrifying because you would never be able to guess what he was thinking, and he would never allow others to guess what he would do next. A real man could be as steady as Mount Tai, but he could also be as turbulent as the Yellow River and destroy everything. Li Jinyan stood straight with an expressionless face. After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, he said calmly, their biggest mistake was to let their guard down, but it's also our best chance. Don't worry, we have to pay back what we owe. Looking at the time, it was almost 6 o'clock. None of his comrades' mood was affected by the SFS Special Border Defense Army's contempt. This kind of gaze was indeed uncomfortable, but it was not uncomfortable enough to affect the rest of the trip. Half an hour later, a helicopter glided over the airport's taxiway. As the elevator was pulled up, the helicopter began to ascend and fly steadily. On the helicopter, there was a detailed description of the competition, and at the same time, an extremely harsh competition rule was listed. 5 days and 4 nights of simulated combat. The 12 special teams from the 12 participating countries are required to complete long-distance, multitask reconnaissance missions in the enemy-occupied area. Everyone also needs to carry 35 kilograms of equipment and daily necessities. G3 looked up from the folder and said with interest, "You've successfully piqued my interest. There's no such thing as the most difficult, only the most difficult." The participants had to carry 35 kilograms of equipment and daily necessities, and they had to carry them forward for more than 100 hours of combat. They could not fall behind. Once a participant was found to have secretly reduced their equipment or daily necessities to reduce their burden, they would be immediately kicked out of the competition and have their team's point deducted. Xia Jinyuan flipped to the page of technical assessments. As his eyes slid across, he reported the assessments one by one through the headset on the helicopter. Ambushes in forests and swamps, climbing with weights, rowing, demoning, shooting while running, crossing rope bridges, reconnaissance and intelligence, battlefield rescue, throwing knives, identifying weapons and equipment, shooting in vehicles, collective shooting with automatic rifles during the day, long-distance shooting at night, and ambushes in forests and swamps within 4 kilometers. These are all technical subjects, and there's nothing difficult about them. The difficult part is, as he spoke, he raised his head from the folder and looked coldly at his comrades. The difficult part is that these technical assessments need to be completed while we are evading the pursuers of Dolly's hypothetical enemies. After more than 100 kilometers of pursuit and interception, it is extremely difficult to complete these assessment items. Running for a long distance and then climbing with weights, the individual's physical fitness has reached the limit, and danger comes with it. If you want to complete the assessment well and get a high score, the difficulty will undoubtedly increase. A competition without death. It really lives up to its name. Chapter 2859. Xia Jinyuan was a Special Forces soldier who had undergone devil training. Even he could not help but break out in a cold sweat as he faced IKA assault. Li Jinyan, who was still carefully reading the rules of the competition, also looked up and said calmly, "IKA assault aims to test the ability of the participating country's special forces to familiarize themselves with the equipment in their hands and cooperate with each other in combat under complicated terrain and excessive physical exhaustion. Therefore, its difficulties are all based on the foundation of our usual training. If we have a good foundation, naturally, all difficulties will not be difficult. Our foundation is solid. Even if our physical exhaustion is severe, we can just grit our teeth and bear with it." Right now, 4 of the 12 participating teams are participating for the first time. The unfamiliar terrain and the complicated competition situation will become our biggest obstacle. There's a rigid time limit. Once we take a detour, it's very likely that we will fall behind in many events. Look at the detailed rules below. There will be 11 control stations throughout the competition. All the participating team members must arrive at each control station within the specified time, no more than 5 minutes. Only then will they be qualified for the next event. Regardless of whether they arrive early or late, points will be deducted even if they are only 1 minute late. If they exceed 20 minutes, 30 points will be deducted. We can make it so that we won't be late, but there's really no way to control our early arrival. Big Shark from Storm Assault looked troubled. It was understandable that points would be deducted if they were late, but he really could not understand why points would be deducted if they arrived early. The early arrival rule is to give fairness to the participating countries for the first time. Take us, for example. We are unfamiliar with the terrain and only have one map. Once we lose the map, it will become a problem for us to find the next control station. As for those countries who have participated in the competition many times, even if they lose the map, they can still use their previous experience to find the main roads and roads they must pass through. This was Yi Qian speaking. She guessed the reason why they could not arrive early, and her comrades nodded in agreement. What she said made sense. It was indeed possible. Yi Qian said again, "I just calculated the time. When we arrive at the next control station, we will have to keep running. We can't control the rest time for 3 hours. We have to reach each control station within 2 hours to have a better chance of success. The rest time for the whole competition cannot exceed 2 hours. If we are 20 minutes late, we will be disqualified from the next event. This is really ruthless. We have to be careful midway. If we are set up, it's very likely that we will be 20 minutes late. That very young baby face said with a fierce look, "We have to be careful to avoid the other party's trap. If they set a trap for us, they will set a trap for others as well. As for us, we can set a trap for others just like them. This is very fair." What is? Xia Jinyuan couldn't confirm whether the helicopter was equipped with eavesdropping equipment. There were many things that he didn't say directly. There was no need to say anything more. He had said what he needed to say. Chapter 2860. Damn it, they're actually 10 minutes ahead of us. We can't let them get there before us. Shah Rukh, we need to overtake them. On the helicopter, the SFS border guard soldiers who were overtaken by the Chinese special forces were furious. They couldn't hide the hatred in their eyes. The pilot who died last time was not a soldier from another army, but a pilot from the SFS border guard. He was a brother they all knew. This time, they were all determined to teach the Chinese soldiers a lesson for their fallen brothers. Shah Rukh shook his head and said coldly, "The official competition hasn't started yet. Don't be too anxious. I'll make them regret coming to the competition. I'll also avenge our fallen brothers. Just wait, brothers. We don't have to be so anxious. Just wait quietly. Victory will only belong to us." It wasn't a big deal for the helicopter to take off 10 minutes earlier. They couldn't teach them a lesson in the air. What he wanted was to teach everyone an unforgettable lesson in the competition. He wanted the Chinese soldiers to remember that they were not to be trifled with. After a while, Shah Rukh smiled and said to his team members, "I'm sure that there are other countries that don't want to see the Chinese soldiers stronger than us. So don't be anxious. Wait until we see which other countries also don't like the appearance of the Chinese soldiers. At that time, it will be more interesting." At noon, the 12 teams from the 12 countries finally arrived. Shah Rukh didn't find any other countries that were hostile to the Chinese soldiers. He thought that it was most likely the special forces sent by a Western hegemonic country. They were all very polite to the Chinese soldiers. The commander-in-chief of the Estonian Defense Forces announced the official start of IKA assault. Next, he would lead the generals of 5 countries as the audience for the competition. The audience would watch the competition for 5 days and 4 nights. They could even see the abilities of the special forces of each country up close. There were no Chinese generals participating in the competition. At 2 o'clock in China, IKA assault had been going on for an hour and a half. Major General Yang, who was sitting in his office, was a little restless even when he was handling official business. There was no way to contact the elite participants, so he didn't know how they were doing. Major General Yang was saved by Commander-in-Chief Xia's call. He answered the phone and replied, "Okay, I'll be right there." Then, he immediately tidied up the documents on his desk and told the secretary outside where he had gone. He then rushed all the way to the Commander-in-Chief's office. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not look for Major General Yang to ask about the situation of the special forces who had gone abroad to participate in the competition. Instead, he handed a photo to Major General Yang. "Old Yang, take a look and see if you still remember this person." Major General Yang, who took the photo, laughed and asked, "Why do you have this photo? If you don't show it to me, I really don't remember taking a picture with them." "Then you know him?" Commander-in-Chief Xia pointed to a young soldier in an old-fashioned military uniform standing behind Major General Yang. "It was taken 23 years ago. At that time, you were just a platoon leader with a rank of first lieutenant, and he is a senior colonel. Since you could take a picture with him, you should know him." Hearing this, Major General Yang, who heard a hint of strangeness, glanced at Commander-in-Chief Xia. Seeing the Commander-in-Chief's solemn expression and indescribable coldness in his eyes, Major General Yang quickly stared at the photo and thought for a while. Chapter 2861. He really didn't have any recollection. It had been 23 years, and he hadn't even seen this photo before. He really couldn't remember who this colonel was. Then, Commander-in-Chief Xia pointed at the female soldier who was standing next to the colonel, but was separated by a soldier. What about her? Do you have any recollection of her? Her cap is too low. I can't see her face. Young Master Yang carefully thought back. Looking at the female soldier whose cap was lowered, a young face suddenly flashed in his mind. When this young face flashed in his mind, Major General Yang was so shocked that he suddenly looked up. No wonder I kept feeling that Yi Qian's girl looked familiar. Commander-in-Chief, look at this female soldier. I look at her facial features. Doesn't Yi Qian look like her? Then he had some recollection of her. Commander-in-Chief Xia took out an inch-long black and white photo. Doesn't she look like this one? Yes, the photo in your hand is of this female soldier with the cap lowered. I finally remember why Yi Qian looked familiar. This. Major General Yang took out another inch-long black and white photo and asked in disbelief. Could this be Yi Qian's mother? Martyr son Xueqing, who has been sacrificed for more than 20 years? Yes, this is Martyr son Xueqing. You took a photo with her before she died. Think about why you took a photo with Martyr son Xueqing and why you took a photo with this colonel. I looked at your resume. You were just transferred to the port of the southern province when this photo was taken. Major General Yang felt more and more that something was wrong. He nodded and said, "At that time, I was just transferred to the Border Defense Company of the Southern Province Port and became a small platoon leader here. But I didn't work there for long. Less than half a year later, another transfer order came and transferred me. At that time, I thought I had done something wrong. I was very nervous and went to look for the company commander of the Border Defense Company at that time. At that time, the commander of the port's Border Defense Company told me that it wasn't because he was dissatisfied with my workability, but because he wanted to give me a position that was more suitable for me. A senior colonel in the army proposed to transfer me to this position. The memories of the past came flooding back like a tide. It also made Major General Yang remember why he had taken a photo with Martyr son Xueqing and this colonel. If I remember correctly, this colonel's surname should be Li, and Martyr son Xueqing came with this colonel to take over my job. I can't believe I forgot about that. Seriously, Major General Yang slapped his forehead and shook his head with a chuckle. It seems like I have quite the fate with the female soldier Yi Qian. She should be a special forces soldier in the Snowfield Brigade. Chapter 2862. Too much time had passed. If it weren't for this old photo, Major General Yang would have forgotten that he had met son Xueqing. But now that he thought about what happened more than 20 years ago, Major General Yang couldn't remember all the details clearly. I don't have a memory as good as Yi Qian's. Commander-in-Chief, I really can't remember how many times Colonel Li came to the port. Major General Yang put down the old photo and sighed. I only had half a year. The first few months were still adapting, and when I finally got used to it, there was a transfer order. My working time at this port is the shortest. Some people and some things I don't even have the slightest impression of. This Colonel Li is the same. I really can't remember if I've seen him before. Maybe I've seen him before, but I was a basic officer at that time. I didn't often see leaders above the regimental level. As for this Colonel Li, Commander-in-Chief, I'm sorry. I've only seen him once. Other than that, I don't have any other impression. Seeing him once was enough. Commander-in-Chief Xia put away the photo and motioned Major General Yang to sit down. He walked out his desk and sat on the sofa outside. I asked you to come over and ask. After asking, just keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone. Yes. Major General Yang nodded. Sitting in his current position, he knew very well what should be said and what should not be said. The Commander-in-Chief personally asked about an old photo with a very serious expression. From this, one could tell the importance of this matter and that it couldn't be spread. After talking about some work-related matters, Commander-in-Chief Xia asked Major General Yang to leave. From the beginning to the end, Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't ask about the situation on Xia Jinyuan's side. He seemed to be very assured about the special forces that went abroad for the competition. Major General Yang didn't leave immediately. Instead, he took the initiative to mention the special forces that participated in the IKA assault. From the moment I got off the plane, the competition had already begun. In my last communication with Q King, he said that they only had one map in their hands. They relied on this map to go to the eastern primeval forest more than 300 kilometers away. Commander-in-Chief, our special forces encountered an unprecedented problem. I'm afraid the situation is not very optimistic. It's actually a good thing to encounter an unprecedented problem. They didn't just go to the competition. The most important thing is to study hard. They can't be complacent. The bigger the problem, the more useful it is, and the more opportunities one can take to surpass oneself. If it's ordinary and no different from the domestic competitions, then there's no need to go. On the contrary, Commander-in-Chief Xia was more than happy to see the special forces sent out by our country encounter setbacks. To improve their combat ability and reach the international standard, they had to have more contact with the outside world, learn more about the strengths of others, and deeply understand their own shortcomings. Although the Snowfield Brigade is the elite of our country's special forces, we have always thought that they are the best special forces in our country. Our head of state once said, "What you say is good is not really good." How good is the Snowfield Brigade? How powerful is it? Let them compete with the special elites from 11 countries in terms of willpower, stamina, strength, tactics, and strategy. Only then will we have a more accurate answer. The contest had already begun, and the process and the answer would be known after 5 days and 4 nights. Now, all they had to do was wait for the news. At 2:30 p.m. in China, the special forces of the 12 countries completed the inventory of all their equipment. With long-range infiltration behind enemy lines as their main strategy, the competition would last for 5 days and 4 nights. Chapter 2863. Yi Qian put on the bulletproof vest and quickly adjusted the size of the shoulder straps. He then methodically stuffed the checked equipment into his body and backpack before starting to complete the final preparations. The encirclement is a little too big. With 2,400 Estonian soldiers deployed, that's equivalent to 200 pursuers per team. It'll be difficult for us to escape, even if we have to. The T6 combatant, who was standing next to Yi Qian, whispered, "With 200 pursuers evenly distributed over the heads of the 8 of us, do you feel Qing Yao?" They were not discussing because they were afraid. Instead, they were excited about the difficulty of the competition they were about to face. Yi Qian felt the same way. "I'm already looking forward to the first match tomorrow." After putting on the vest made of highly resistant fiber, Yi Qian turned to the T6 combatant who was already getting restless and said with a smile, 8 against 200. I don't think it'll be difficult." Of course it won't be difficult. What I'm most interested in is competing with the special forces of these 3 countries. As the T6 combatant put on the vest, he raised his hands slightly in front of him. With a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes, he chuckled and said, "I can no longer control my adrenaline secretion when competing with them. I wish we could start right now. The excitement you want will start on time at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning." "All right, I'll go check if the equipment in the vest is broken." Yi Qian grabbed the semi-automatic sniper rifle, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and strode towards the inspection point. For this competition, the organizers had prepared a series of exercise equipment for each country's special forces. Among them, the vests made of highly resistant fiber that were worn by each special forces soldier were also newly developed exercise equipment. There was an instrument inside that was sensitive to laser particles. Once the enemy was hit, the instrument would activate, and the organizers would immediately calculate the score. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan had already completed the final inventory of their equipment and were standing in front waiting for their comrades to come over. When Yi Qian came over, the 2 of them patted her on the shoulder to give her silent encouragement. "Go, go, go." The voice of the Western countries' special forces came from the front. They had completed the inventory of all their equipment and were now boarding the ship to the primeval forest on the other side. Their current location was on the shore of a natural lake in the forest park, while the real battlefield was on the other side of the lake. It was a place where no one could possibly exist, filled with unknown dangers. The rubber dinghies were pushed to the lake. The 8 American Special Forces soldiers waded about a meter into the water before jumping onto the dinghies one by one. They picked up the black paddles and paddled toward the opposite side of the lake. They were full of confidence and power. Yi Qian narrowed his eyes and looked at the armbands on their arms. Their armbands were made of eagles holding a spear and a harpoon on each of their feet and circling around a sea anchor. The anchor represented their country's navy. The eagle represented their country's spirit of freedom. The gun represented their country's firm belief in defending their country. And the harpoon represented Poseidon, the god of the sea. This was also a tri-amphibious special forces standing on the other side of the legend, creating countless outstanding military achievements of very powerful special forces that were famous all over the world. Next, the Chinese soldiers would have a competition with them, and it was also the competition that the Chinese soldiers were looking forward to the most. We're almost ready to go. When the 4 special forces set off on their rubber dinghies, Xia Jinyuan smiled at Li Jinyin and said, "It's not too early or too late, just in time." Chapter 2864. It was her first time participating in IKA assault. It was not a wise move to rush to the first place. Following the rules and taking things one step at a time was more in line with their tactics. What's more, there were so many eyes watching in the dark, so they should act more cautiously. Yi Qian, who was being looked at by many people, stood in place like a towering mountain, allowing them to look at her secretly. Occasionally, she could hear a few soft laughter with a hint of mockery in it. I can't believe that the Chinese side would send a female soldier. I bet this must be the first female soldier to join IKA assault since it started. It's incredible. I can't believe it. Okay, partner, you have to be considerate. Well, it's a big country that has been poor for a long time. Maybe it's not easy for them to send a few soldiers. You can't be too harsh. You need to be considerate. That's right. We need to be considerate of them. However, we don't need to be considerate of them in the next match. We have to tell them that this is not a place where female soldiers can come. Female soldiers should obediently go back to the army and stay there. This was another Western country, from a highly developed country on the island of Great Britain. Yi Qian began to hear these words with similar meanings when she arrived here. Until now, she wasn't angry anymore. It made her more aware that her country was so fragile in the eyes of these people. They took it for granted and didn't think that their perception was wrong at all. Then let them continue to take it for granted. The more they took it for granted, the more convenient it would be for the Chinese soldiers to act. Now you're acting like a big boss. I'll teach you a lesson the day after tomorrow. Big Eel threw the rifle on his shoulder and put on his back. His seemingly cold eyes swept across the other country's special forces soldiers who had already boarded the rubber boat one by one. Under his cold eyes, there was a cold ruthlessness. The Chinese rubber boat pushed out of the lake. Xia Jinyuan took the lead to jump on, walked to the front to stabilize the hull, and pulled Li Jinyin to jump on to stabilize the stern. Then he reached out and began to pull his comrades up one by one. Yi Qian was the last to come up. The moment he held her hand, she heard him say in a low voice, "Don't take their words to heart. The more they act like this, the more advantageous it is for you. Do things in secret and don't let them see your true ability. Don't let them target you." Yi Jian's strong and powerful arm pulled hard. Using the strength of his arm, Yi Jian's slender legs kicked into the water. She stepped on the edge of the rubber boat with one foot first. With a splash, her feet came out of the water with water droplets. With a splash, she jumped out of the water and boarded the boat nimbly. After they came up, Yi Qian smiled and said, "I didn't take it to heart. Let them speak. Their contempt now will be their pain in the future. I won't care about this. There's no need to." Seeing this, Li Jinyan could not help but reveal a faint smile. His sister had a very strong heart. She could resist the gossip of the outside world and would definitely not be affected by it. It was no wonder that Q King always said that the Qing Niao he saw was only the beginning. As for how strong the real Qing Niao was, it would take time to discover and understand. After that, Li Jinyan stopped observing Yi Qian's expression when he heard similar words again. He knew that these words would not affect Yi Qian at all. Chapter 2865. As the Chinese soldiers set off, the generals of the observation group focused their binoculars on the Chinese soldiers. China was a big country, but the existence of this big country always made people feel that it was very weak and did not have much of a sense of existence. Even if they occasionally heard news about them, it was all trivial news. As time passed, they felt that the military strength of this big country was just so. However, their grand celebration in 1999 shocked countless countries, and it was like a slap to those countries who looked down on China. An unknown, low-key, poor country actually showed off many self-developed weapons. They had a total of 42 types of equipment, and more than 90% of them were new equipment. Most of them were high-tech weapons designed and produced by themselves, and they were even main battle weapons. The appearance of these weapons shocked countless countries. They did not know that a poor country had secretly produced so many high-tech weapons. They did not need the help of other countries at all and completed their own research and development. Once a country had enough ability to research and develop on its own, it meant that the country's military strength began to increase step by step. It meant that more and more self-developed weapons would be successfully developed in the future. It also meant that the big country was no longer weak, but a big country was rising. What was even more terrifying was that the rise of a big country was completely hidden, and the outside world could not see anything. It was also this grand celebration that made countless countries recognize China again and know that this big country in the East had risen. Now, they had the chance to observe the strength of the rising soldiers of a big country at close range. They all wanted to see how strong they were and if they would shock them again. Unfortunately, from the beginning, the appearance of the Chinese soldiers did not shock anyone. They were ordinary and unremarkable. It was impossible to tell how powerful they were or if they had any real ability. Their movements don't look outstanding, but their movements are very standard. It can be seen that this is a group of special forces who have undergone very strict training. However, there's nothing special about them. They look very ordinary. A general from another country said with some disappointment. He then looked through his binoculars at the Triphibian special forces of a certain country who had already rowed to the center of the lake. Seeing that they had maintained first place, the general could not help but laugh. These were the soldiers of their country, and he was proud of them. Standing beside the general was the commander of Estonia's national defense. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "General High Will looks a little impatient. The competition has just begun. It's difficult to see how powerful a country's special forces are from the most ordinary rowing. There's no way to tell it all. That's why General Hay will have to wait patiently." Ha, you're right. I was too impatient. General Hay put down his binoculars and spoke to the Estonian defense commander. I may have placed too much hope in them, which is why I feel disappointed. As you know, the new self-developed weapons that suddenly appeared during China's 1999 celebration were too shocking. So I really want to know if the Chinese soldiers are also more powerful than before. I really want to know, but I didn't expect their performance to be so normal from the start, so I didn't have much hope. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.